President Trump's tariff announcement in the White House, top of the hour. We'll have full team coverage. We'll be back with the Market Zone next.
CNBC. Live ambitiously.
Our goal is to achieve 81% of electricity from a renewable source by 2030.
We hear from the president who has made his...
We have a tracking system more efficient because the panels are following the sun.
This area is protected as kind of an island for the biodiversity that surrounds the plant. It's only by valuing our natural resources that we can truly move to a more sustainable future.
So this is the best dish to me in Vietnam. Good childhood flavor.
Hi everyone, my name is Thủy Tiên and welcome to Ho Chi Minh City. Lotto is the name of the game, just like bingo in America.
Vietnamese people drink coffee every day. If you drink the Vietnamese coffee, you can recognize the difference in the Vietnamese Robusta beans. It's a very strong, very resilient beans. Bitter. I think it's quite hard to the foreigner to imagine what they have in Cơm Tấm. You can find a lot of different kind of seafood here because we have a long poster. It's like the time when you feasting and socializing with your friends and family. 1, 2, 3, yo! Join me during my downtime.
Ambition is fluid. One day it might be about getting through the day. Another it might be about the bigger story or interview of your career. Keep your finger on the pulse and adapt. You never know how your industry or career might change. Try to be on the forefront of that change so you're always ahead.
CNBC is on assignment in Barcelona as Spain once again plays host to the Mobile World Congress.
We have all this kind of wildfires everywhere. You know, there is the need for data centers. There is the need for more computation power. There is this need for AI. There is the need for connecting the world to bring businesses together. There is the need for consumers to have faster access. And for all of this, you know, we are kind of firefighters trying to solve that problem. But we have a leaking hose here.
Now bring in Professor Jeremy
Siegel. The regulatory environment is not fitting.
I think it has created a different thinking. The momentum's still there. Large language model continue to be prevalent.
AI is such a compelling technology. Every country in the world is going to pursue it. I think it's an imperative that the Western world lead in innovating in this new technology. That means investing in compute so we have the best infrastructure. It means investing in data so that the models can be trained in innovative ways.
Market Zone, CNBC senior markets commentator Mike Santoli is here to break down these crucial moments of the trading day. Plus, Phil LeBeau on Tesla shares today, big mover, and potential buyers reportedly making their bids for TikTok. Kate Rooney with those details. Phil, we kick it off with you. We talked a little bit about this already today, this move in Tesla shares and why.
The move higher, we'll talk about that at the end. It has to do with whether Elon Musk is stopping his work or nearing the end of his work in D.C. Let's start with the news earlier today. Q1 deliveries. These were ugly numbers, worse than expected. Just over 336,000 delivered worldwide. The street was expecting 377. Lowest quarterly deliveries since Q2 of 22. And we've talked about this, Scott. A big part of this is the decline in sales, not only here in the U.S., but around the world. Today, it was a report out of China that the sales or deliveries of vehicles built in China in March were down 11.5%. And I want to show you shares of Tesla going back to the election of Donald Trump back in November. Why are we showing you this? Because earlier today, shares moved higher on a report that Elon Musk may be nearing the end of his work on Doge and with the Trump administration. Well, what happened after that? Carolyn Levitt, the press secretary, said it's a garbage report. And just a few minutes ago, Elon Musk tweeted out, yep, fake news. Scott, I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, they call fake anything they don't like. NBC has matched that story, by the way, from Politico. So we'll see how that transpires. Phil, thank you. Kate Rooney on TikTok. What do we know here?
Scott, so our David Faber now reporting that AppLovin is among those looking to bid for TikTok. And then earlier we had Amazon. The company declined to comment on reports that it's making a last-minute play to buy the app. Investors, though, do see the move as strategic. Amazon shares moved higher on that. They've really tried to crack the code to social shopping for years. It is the way a lot of younger shoppers are searching before they go to buy, and TikTok could integrate directly with Amazon's logistics and product listings. RBC pointing out the boost it could potentially bring to Amazon's $17 billion ad business, help increase its share of that digital ad market. And there are some possible synergies for Prime Video with short-form content. Investors may also view this one as defensive if they can keep TikTok out of the hands of any major U.S. competitors. But Scott, still a lot of regulatory hurdles there. Back to you.
Okay, Kate, thank you so much. We're about here at the end, but we're going to get the announcement. We're going to see what this market does.
Yeah, and the market is showing its willingness to believe that there's room for relief here, that the risk reward is tactically improved with that 10% correction. I don't think the level tells you anything specific about what the market is expecting or pricing in, but any message of flexibility or something that's enabled you to run those tariffs through your economic estimates and come out with something not so draconian, maybe the market can relax higher as Treasury yields did from the early morning lows.
All right, so the crowd's gathered in the Rose Garden. We will get those details. Market finishing green. I'll see you tomorrow.
That bell marks the end of regulation. Ellington Credit Company ringing the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange. Heidmar Maritime Holdings doing the honors at the NASDAQ, and stocks closing higher today, adding to gains for the week ahead of a major hour of breaking news. That is the scorecard on Wall Street. But winners stay late. Welcome to Closing Bell Overtime. I'm John Fort with Morgan Brennan.
Well, it's the moment Wall Street has been waiting for, and Main Street too, as President Trump gets set to lay out his tariff strategy in a Rose Garden address that's beginning here in just a few moments. You can see that on your screen. Let's get straight to our Megan Casella, who is at the White House waiting the president. Megan.
Hey guys, this is the moment we've been waiting for, at least for this week, but a couple of months now, finding out exactly what the president wants to do on reciprocal tariffs. You can see the shot there. They've got about 150 guests in attendance. Those American flags from where I'm standing. We've been hearing trumpets and horns for the last few minutes. And the fact that everybody is out there already, and the fact, I will say, that we're afraid of some rain coming potentially here in Washington, tells me this event looks to be about running on time. So it won't be too long before we hear the president's answer on this. I've been told he spent the last couple of hours perfecting the plans on this, perfecting his speech, working on this set of remarks. We expect to hear him speak and also to see him sign an executive order. So that executive order will lay out the legal language and tell us exactly which direction the president is going with this. Up until the end, I have been told that no options have been off the table, even as some looked more likely than others. He's been debating everything from a blanket tariff as high as 20% on one hand to those customized country-by-country rates on the other, or they might land somewhere in between. So that's what we're waiting for. A lot more details to come, but any moment now we're finally going to hear what the president has decided, guys.
All right, Megan Casella, we're going to be checking in with you throughout the show, along with the rest of our panel of experts, including CNBC's Eamon Jabbers, our senior economics reporter Steve Leisman here on set, senior markets commentator Mike Santoli, of course, plus geopolitical expert Marco Papich, and Raymond James Washington policy analyst Ed Mills. But first, let's get the pulse of what Wall Street is looking for out of this announcement. Joining us is Charles Schwab chief investment strategist Lizanne Saunders. Lizanne, how tough a tariff message do you think is already priced into this market at these levels?
It's hard to say. I think a more serious economic downturn relative to what we've seen so far, meaning if you start to see recession risk significantly increase from where we are right now, I don't think that's priced into the market. Some of the slowdown that we're already witnessing, I think, is embedded in what has been this 10 to 15% correction, depending on what index. But I think what we may be seeing here is a combination of the perception around maybe this is peak uncertainty. It doesn't mean we have all the answers in terms of the tentacles into the inflation data, the Fed reaction function, the economy, but maybe peak uncertainty. And then also on a day like today, at least intraday a little bit earlier, Goldman Sachs's basket of most shorted stocks was up about 4%. So I think there's been a lot of positioning push on a day like this so as not to have your positions lean significantly in one direction or another until we hear what the news is.
Some rumblings out of the EU, out of China, some other places about responses to these tariffs. Is that expected and priced in as well? I mean, it seems like there's the uncertainty of response after the uncertainty of this announcement is done.
No, I think the ripple effects are not fully priced in yet. And it's important to keep reminding everybody that when comps are made to 2018 in terms of economic impact, inflation impact, or lack thereof, that was a very different backdrop then. We were not talking about anything as significant as these tariffs, scope, size, magnitude, not to mention that what we're seeing in terms of the retaliatory response is much more significant among our trading partners. So that all still has to filter into numbers. I think the next most important piece of this will probably come when we start to get first quarter earnings, to hear from companies, not just about their outlooks, but in particular what their perspective is on their own profit margins. Because a few months ago, when we had much loftier expectations for 2025 earnings, when the consensus was around 14 or 15% for calendar year 2025, that was predicated on record-breaking profit margins. That clearly has been part of the haircut to what is now about a 10% correction. I think we're going to get more clarity, and I think that this is the next sort of test point for the market from a fundamental perspective, is what we hear from companies during earnings season.
Liz Ann, we've seen a rotation out of growth into value. I mean, maybe that's reversed a little bit in the last couple of days, give or take. But is that the way to position yourself, particularly if you're looking at U.S. equities and we are talking about peak uncertainty?
Well, you know, I have trouble sometimes with the simplicity around growth versus value. Are we talking about the factors of value or the characteristics or preconceived notions of what is value, or the index is labeled value? And that can vary a lot from index to index in terms of what the components are. I think what we are seeing is consistency and a story, a narrative being told by the factors that are working well. So stability kind of factors, strength and stability in dividend yield, strength and stability in profit margins, lower volatility in the face of generally higher volatility. So it continues with that quality wrapper from a factor perspective on what's working. But I think in particular, some of those aforementioned factors, for somewhat obvious reasons, are the way for investors to think about navigating, at least near term, through this
Liz Ann,
very uncertain.
We're going to wrap it up because we got President Trump walking out of the Oval Office right now. We're monitoring that as we await him coming to the Rose Garden to announce his tariff policy on what he has called Liberation Day. Let's have a listen.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Nice crowd. What a good-looking group of people. Well, we have some very, very good news today, and a lot of good things are happening for our country. Please sit down. My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day, waiting for a long time. April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. We're going to make it wealthy, good and wealthy. For decades, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike. American steel workers, auto workers, farmers, and skilled craftsmen. We have a lot of them here with us today. They really suffered gravely. They watched in anguish as foreign leaders have stolen our jobs, foreign cheaters have ransacked our factories, and foreign scavengers have torn apart our once beautiful American dream. We had an American dream that you don't hear so much about. You did 4 years ago. And you are now, but you don't too often, and for many years and decades even, you didn't hear too much about. Our country and its taxpayers have been ripped off for more than 50 years, but it is not going to happen anymore. It's not going to happen. In a few moments, I will sign a historic executive order instituting reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world. Reciprocal, that means they do it to us and we do it to them. Very simple, can't get any simpler than that. This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, in American history. It's our declaration of economic independence. For years, hardworking American citizens were forced to sit on the sidelines as other nations got rich and powerful, much of it at our expense. But now it's our turn to prosper, and in so doing, use trillions and trillions of dollars to reduce our taxes and pay down our national debt, and it'll all happen very quickly. With today's action, we are finally going to be able to make America great again, greater than ever before. Jobs and factories will come roaring back into our country, and you see it happening already. We will supercharge our domestic industrial base. We will pry open foreign markets and break down foreign trade barriers. And ultimately, more production at home will mean stronger competition and lower prices for consumers. This will be indeed the golden age of America. It's coming back. We're going to come back very strongly. We're pleased to be joined on this momentous occasion by Vice President J.D. Vance. J.D., thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Where are you, J.D.? No, that wasn't too hard to find. I was looking, he likes to take a low-key attitude, so usually we sit right in front. He's gaining a lot of confidence, Mike, isn't he? And nearly my entire cabinet is here, as well as Speaker Mike Johnson, who's done an amazing job. And with the great success we had last night in Florida, we have a majority of 7. And 7's like a lot when we had it at 1, right? You've done a fantastic job. And many of the members of the House and Senate are with us. Senators, Congressmen, thank you all for being with us. We appreciate it. For decades, the United States slashed our trade barriers on other countries, while those nations placed massive tariffs on our products and created outrageous non-monetary barriers to decimate our industries. And in many cases, the non-monetary barriers were worse than the monetary ones. They manipulated their currencies, subsidized their exports, stole our intellectual property, imposed exorbitant VAT taxes to disadvantage our products, adopted unfair rules and technical standards, and created filthy pollution havens. They were absolutely filthy, but they always came to us and they said, we're violating, we should pay for it. It's all detailed in a very big report by the U.S. Trade Representative on foreign trade barriers, and I'll just hold it up for you. It's available, and you don't have to pay too much. As I understand it, you'll pay nothing. It's a lot of work. A lot of work for something, actually, because it's a special book. It's frankly, it's very upsetting when you read it, when you see what people have been doing to us for 30 years. This all happened with no response from the United States of America, none whatsoever. But those days are over. Let me offer just a few examples of the vicious attacks our workers have faced for so many years. The United States charges other countries only a 2.4 tariff on motorcycles. Meanwhile, Thailand and others are charging much higher prices, like 60%. India charges 70%. Vietnam charges 75%, and others are even higher than that. Likewise, until today, the United States has for decades charged a 2.5 tariff. Think of that, 2.5%. On foreign-made automobiles. The European Union charges us more than 10% tariffs, and they have 20% VATs, much, much higher. India charges 70%, and perhaps worst of all are the non-monetary restrictions imposed by South Korea, Japan, and very many other nations. As a result of these colossal trade barriers, 81% of the cars in South Korea are made in South Korea. 94% of the cars in Japan are made in Japan. Toyota sells 1 million foreign-made automobiles into the United States, and General Motors sells almost none. Ford sells very little. None of our companies are allowed to go into other countries. And I say that, friend and foe. And in many cases, the friend is worse than the foe in terms of trade. But such horrendous imbalances have devastated our industrial base and put our national security at risk. I don't blame these other countries at all for this calamity. I blame former presidents and past leaders who weren't doing their job. They let it happen, and they let it happen to an extent that nobody can even believe. That's why, effective at midnight, we will impose a 25% tariff on all foreign-made automobiles. Thank you. Brian, I'd like to have you come up here for a second, okay? I just see him sitting. He's been a fan of ours, and he understands this business a lot better than the economists, a lot better than anybody. Brian, say a few words, please, would you?
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
President.
It's a great honor to have you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I grew up just north of Detroit, Michigan, in Macomb County, known as the home of the Reagan Democrats. My first vote for president was for Ronald Reagan. I thought that was going to be the best president I ever saw in my lifetime until Donald J. Trump came along. I have watched my entire life, I have watched plant after plant after plant in Detroit and in the metro Detroit area close. There are now plants sitting idle. There are now plants that are underutilized, and Donald Trump's policies are going to bring product back into those underutilized plants. There's going to be new investment. There's going to be new plants built. And the UAW members, and I brought 20 of them with me, they're sitting right over here. We support Donald Trump's policies on tariffs 100%. So, Mr. President, we can't thank you enough. And in 6 months or a year, we're going to begin to see the benefits. I can't wait to see what's happening through 3 or 4 years down the road. Thank you, Mr. President.
What a great guy. He got it right from the beginning. He got it before almost anybody else. This group over there, they got it too. And, you know, we won the state of Michigan. We won almost all of them. But we won Michigan by a lot, and I want to just thank you all. The auto workers were fantastic. The Teamsters were fantastic. Everyone was pretty good, I will tell you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You're going to be very happy very soon, and you probably see what's happening with all of the, not only car companies, but car companies in particular. See it with all of the ones they're moving, they're announcing day in, day out. You're seeing it. Nobody's ever seen anything like that. With today's actions, we're also standing up for our great farmers and ranchers who are brutalized by nations all over the world. Brutalized. Canada, by the way, imposes a 250 to 300% tariff on many of our dairy products. They do the first can of milk. They do the first little carton of milk at a very low price, but after that it gets bad, and then it gets up to 275, 300%. So when they're figuring what's Canada charging, they say, oh, about 2%, 3%. But take a look at what happens down the road. When you look a little bit, it's not a pretty picture, and we don't like it, and it's not fair. It's not fair to our farmers. It's not fair to our country. And with countries like Canada, you know, we subsidize a lot of countries and keep them going and keep them in business. In the case of Mexico, it's $300 billion a year. In the case of Canada, it's close to $200 billion a year. And I say, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? I mean, at what point do we say, you got to work for yourselves, and you got to, this is why we have the big deficits. This is why we have that amount of debt that's been placed on our heads over the last number of years, and we're really not taking it anymore. Through non-tariff barriers, the European Union bans imports of most American poultry. You understand? They say, we want to send you our cars, we want to send you everything, but we're not going to take anything that you have. Australia bans, and they're wonderful people and wonderful everything, but they ban American beef, yet we imported $3 billion of Australian beef from them just last year alone. They won't take any of our beef. They don't want it because they don't want it to affect their farmers. And you know what? I don't blame them, but we're doing the same thing right now, starting about midnight tonight, I would say. And China charges American rice farmers an overquota, it's called, a tariff rate of 65%. South Korea charges 50. Actually, they charge different, from 50% to 513%. And Japan, our friend, charges us 700%. But that's because they don't want us selling rice and other things. Who can blame them, Madam Secretary? Agriculture, great job you did on eggs, by the way. The egg prices came down 50%. You got them down 50%. Once we got involved, they were going through the sky. The egg prices, they were going through the sky, and you did a fantastic job. Now we have lots of eggs, and they're much cheaper, down about 59% now, and they're going down further. We charge 2.8% for so many things that other countries are charging 200%, 300%, and 400% for. If imposing tariffs and protective barriers made nations poor, then every country on earth would be racing to eliminate these policies, and China would be the first on line. They run a very strong country, but they're not first in line, and the American people are paying a very big price. From 1789 to 1913, we were a tariff-backed nation, and the United States was proportionately the wealthiest it has ever been. So wealthy, in fact, that in the 1880s, they established a commission to decide what they were going to do with the vast sums of money they were collecting. We were collecting so much money so fast, we didn't know what to do with it. Isn't that a nice problem to have? What do you think, Marco? Good problem? Marco would love that problem. But we don't have that problem anymore, but we're not going to have it very much longer, I will tell you. But they collected so much money, they actually formed a commission, what they were going to do with the money, who they were going to give it to, and how much. Then in 1913, for reasons unknown to mankind, they established the income tax so that citizens, rather than foreign countries, would start paying the money necessary to run our government. Then in 1929, it all came to a very abrupt end with the Great Depression, and it would have never happened if they had stayed with the tariff policy. It would have been a much different story. They tried to bring back tariffs to save our country, but it was gone. It was gone. It was too late. Nothing could have been done. It took years and years to get out of that depression, far longer than even FDR had that office right over there for a long period of time. The ramp system, that's rather intricate, was built because of him, and every time you walk up, you think of him, and he did a great job in many ways, but it lasted long beyond his terms, as you know. But it's not too late any longer, and we're going to start being smart, and we're going to start being very wealthy again. We're going to be wealthy as a country because they've taken so much of our wealth away from us. We're not going to let that happen. We truly can be very wealthy. We can be so much wealthier than any country. It's not even believable, but we're getting smart. Nearly a century later, in the face of unrelenting economic warfare, the United States can no longer continue with a policy of unilateral economic surrender. We cannot pay the deficits of Canada, Mexico, and so many other countries. We used to do it. We can't do it anymore. We take care of countries all over the world. We pay for their military. We pay for everything they have to pay, and then when you want to cut back a little bit, they get upset that you're not taking care of them any longer. But we have to take care of our people, and we're going to take care of our people first, and I'm sorry to say that. And today we're standing up for the American worker, and we are finally putting America first. In Sleepy Joe Biden's last year in office, the United States hemorrhaged 100,000 manufacturing jobs, and the number was going through the roof at levels never seen before. And our trade deficit reached a record $1.2 trillion, which is unheard of. Since the beginning of NAFTA, the worst trade deal ever made, it was a horror show. I was able to determine it. They all said you'd never be able to get it out. We had to get approval from Congress to get it terminated. We had to live with that deal. It was the worst trade deal ever made by far. But since the very beginning of NAFTA, our country lost 90,000 factories. Think of what that is, 90,000. Think about putting a map up and putting tax on it. You wouldn't have enough room 90,000. I said, is that possible? We had it checked 4 different times, and it was actually somewhat higher than that. And 5 million manufacturing jobs were lost while racking up trade deficits of $19 trillion. That was the worst trade deal ever made. As a result of these gigantic losses, foreign nations now own $26 trillion more of American assets than think of this, than the Americans own of their own foreign assets or other foreign assets. The United States can no longer produce enough antibiotics to treat our sick. We have a tremendous problem. We have to go to foreign countries to treat our sick. If anything ever happened from a war standpoint, we wouldn't be able to do it. We import virtually all of our computers, phones, televisions, and electronics. We used to dominate the field, and now we import it all from different countries. A single shipyard in China now produces more ships every year than all of the American shipyards combined. Think of that. And it was a business that we used to dominate. We used to dominate it totally. In short, chronic trade deficits are no longer merely an economic problem. They're a national emergency that threatens our security and our very way of life. It's a very great threat to our country. And for these reasons, starting tomorrow, the United States will implement reciprocal tariffs on other nations. It's been a long time since we even thought of that. We used to think about it a lot. We didn't think about it for many decades, and you see what's happened. For nations that treat us badly, we will calculate the combined rate of all their tariffs, non-monetary barriers, and other forms of cheating. And because we are being very kind, we're kind people, very kind. You're not so kind when you get ripped off with your salaries. My oil worker friends and my Teamster friends and all of the unions that typically voted Democrat, they're not voting Democrat anymore because worker, whether union or non-worker, they're for the Republicans now. That's what happened. But we will charge them approximately half of what they are and have been charging us. So the tariffs will be not a full reciprocal. I could have done that, yes, but it would have been tough for a lot of countries. We didn't want to do that. I'd like to see the chart if you have it. Could you bring it up, Howard? This is our great Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick. Thanks, Howard. So if you look at that, China, first row, China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. So 67%, I think you can, for the most part, see it. Those with good eyes, with bad eyes. We didn't want to bring, it's very windy out here. We didn't want to bring out the big charts because it had no chance of standing. Fortunately, we came armed with a little smaller chart. So it's 67%, so we're going to be charging a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%. I think, in other words, they charge us, we charge them less. So how can anybody be upset? They will be because we never charge anybody anything, but now we're going to charge. European Union, they're very tough, very, very tough traders. You know, you think of European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic. 39%, we're going to charge them 20%, so we're charging them essentially half. Vietnam, great negotiators, great people. They like me, I like them. The problem is they charge us 90%. We're going to charge them 46% tariff. Taiwan, where they took all of our computer chips and semiconductors. We used to be the king, right? We were everything. We had all of it. Now we have almost none of it, except the biggest company is coming in. We're going to end up with almost 40%. Lee Zeldin's working to get their approvals. And it's an amazing company. Mr. Wei, of one of the great companies of the world, actually. They're coming in from Taiwan, and they're going to build one of the biggest plants in the world, maybe the biggest for that. But 64%, we're going to charge them 32%. Japan, very, very tough, great people. And again, I don't blame the people for doing it. I think they're very smart in doing it. I blame the people that sat right in that Oval Office, right over there, right behind the Resolute desk or whichever desk they chose. Japan, 46%. They would charge us 46%, and much higher for certain items like cars, you know, little items like cars. 46%, we're charging them 24%. India, very, very tough, very, very tough. The prime minister just left, and he's a great friend of mine, but I said, you're a friend of mine, but you're not treating us right. They charge us 52%. You have to understand, we charge them almost nothing for years and years and decades, and it was only 7 years ago when I came in, we started with China and charged them. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China in tariffs, and they understood, honestly. President Xi understood. He said, look, I understand, and the other countries, and they all understand. We're going to have to go through a little tough love, maybe, but they all understand. They're ripping us off, and they understood it. Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe. He was a fantastic man. He was unfortunately taken from us, assassination. But I went to him and I said, Shinzo, we have to do something. A trade is not fair. And he said, I know that. I know that. And he was a great gentleman. He was a fantastic man, but he understood immediately what I was talking about. I said, Shinzo, we have to do something. He said, I know that. And we worked out a deal, and it would have been a much better deal, but frankly, there were many years left on the deal that was made previous to my getting there, but it was something. If you look at Switzerland, 61% to 31%, Indonesia, Malaysia, Cambodia, oh, look at Cambodia, 97%. We're going to bring it down to 49. They made a fortune with the United States of America. United Kingdom, 10%, and we'll go 10%. So we'll do the same thing. South Africa, 60%, 30%, and they've got some bad things going on in South Africa. You know, we're paying them billions of dollars, and we cut the funding because a lot of bad things are happening in South Africa. The fake news ought to be looking at it. They don't want to report it. Brazil, 10%, 10%. Bangladesh is 74%. So you see what's going on. Pakistan, 58%. Sri Lanka, 88%. So what we're doing is we're taking not the full, we could take the full 88%. Thanks a lot. He's doing a very good job. How's he doing, all right? I think you better take it with you. It's not going to last very long. He's going to put it, it's going to follow you down with the wind. I brought a hat just in case it got too windy, but here, would anybody like a hat? I'm not giving it to a cabinet. I'm giving it to the auto workers. Come here. Thank you, fellas. Get it. That's it. That's it. They deserve it more than our cabinet. Our cabinet has plenty of hats. But you see the numbers. The numbers are so disproportionate. They're so unfair. At the same time, we will establish a minimum baseline tariff of 10%. You notice that on the chart. And that'll be on other countries to help rebuild our economy and to prevent cheating. So we're going to have a minimum of cheating, and we're going to be very severe on the people that at the gate that watch the tariffs and watch the product coming in, because there's been a lot of bad things happening at the gate because the money is so enormous that you're talking about. There's never been probably anything like it in terms of the enormity. And there are a lot of bad things happen at the people that do the check-in, and they're looking at 10-year jail sentences if they do play. We're going to treat them so good, but if they cheat, the repercussions are going to be extremely strong. Foreign nations will finally be asked to pay for the privilege of access to our market, the biggest market in the world. We're right now the biggest market in the world. We had a great country 4 years ago in terms of the economics. We were doubling up on China. We were doing so well. Nobody was going to catch us, but so much of it slipped away over the last 4 years under Biden. I campaigned on this policy throughout last year, and today that promise was made, and it was also a promise, as you know, that was kept. Promises made, promises kept. To any company that objects to our common sense reciprocal tariffs, again, reciprocal, back and forth, back and forth. And I call this kind reciprocal. This is not full reciprocal. This is kind reciprocal. But what we do is we cut it in half. We charge them. My answer is very simple. If they complain, if you want your tariff rate to be zero, then you build your product right here in America, because there is no tariff if you build your plant, your product in America. And we've seen companies coming in like we've never seen before. Likewise to all of the foreign presidents, prime ministers, kings, queens, ambassadors, and everyone else who will soon be calling to ask for exemptions from these tariffs. I say, terminate your own tariffs, drop your barriers, don't manipulate your currencies. They manipulate their currencies like nobody can even believe, which is a bad, bad thing and very devastating to us. And start buying tens of billions of dollars of American goods. Tariffs give our country protection against those that would do us economic harm. And many people were looking to do us economic harm. Maybe not so obviously, but they were doing tremendous economic harm. But even more importantly, they will give us growth. These tariffs are going to give us growth like you haven't seen before. And it'll be something very special to watch. I am so looking forward. And Brian, it's going to happen even faster than you said. You know, you might say, but it's already started. It's already started. Work's already begun on plants all around the country. And you see that as before. These are big, rich companies. We have $61 billion started on a big plant going up. It's going to be announced over the next 2 days, and they already started work. Many of these the biggest companies in the world, they've committed to build. We're going to build, sir. And they came here to see me, and they wanted to know if they could have a press conference. I do as many as I can. I'm pretty busy trying to stop Russia and Ukraine and the Middle East. We got to stop that. We got to stop the Houthis, which we're making tremendous. They like shooting ships down and out of the water, sinking ships. They get a kick out of it, but they're not getting such a kick out of it now, are they, Mr. Secretary? They're not getting such a kick out of that now. But here are just a short list of some of the companies that have already announced and committed to investment. And this is a company that built its factories and its plants in China. Apple is going to spend $500 billion. They never spent money like that here. They're going to build their plants here. SoftBank, OpenAI, and Oracle, great companies, are investing $500 billion almost immediately. NVIDIA, a hot company, is investing hundreds of billions of dollars. They just announced. TSMC, the biggest, most important company in the world of chips from Taiwan, with no investment from us, is investing $200 billion. And they said the reason was, number one, the election of November 5th, and number two, the tariffs. They don't want to pay the tariffs, and the way they're not paying it is to build their plant here. So we're going to go from almost no percentage. We used to have 100% of the chip market. Now it's all in Taiwan. Almost all of it's in Taiwan, a couple of other countries, but mostly in Taiwan. And think of it, we had 100%. We lost it because of people in that office that didn't do their job. They allowed it to be stolen from us. Johnson & Johnson, great company, $55 billion. Eli Lilly, $27 billion. Meta is investing $500 billion. Wow. The Mac is investing $20 billion. CMA, CGM, $20 billion. And then you have Merck and Clarios, Stellantis, General Motors, GE Aerospace, Honda, Nissan, Hyundai are all putting in billions and billions of dollars, and they're committed 100%. So. And we've never had, and this is after 2.5 months. This is after just a short, this all took place as soon as we came out with what everybody wanted to do. You know, I watched a gentleman today on television. He used to work with Lee Iacocca, a very respected automobile person, and he said, you know, because they're asking people, they try and get as many negative people as they can, but they can't find them too much. It's pretty hard to find in terms of what we're doing, especially when they see all this investment. They said, so tell me, what do you think of what Trump is doing from the automobile standpoint? He said, I can't believe it. Somebody is finally, he's an older guy, real pro, really top guy, with Lee Iacocca. He said, I never thought I'd see the day when this would happen, where somebody had the courage to go and do what has to be done. This is transforming our nation. Our entire nation is going to be transformed, not only with the cars, but on every single other item that's built. We're going to become an industrial powerhouse. And he said that so beautifully today. In fact, I'm going to find out, I'm going to get a tape, And Bruce, I'm going to get that tape and I'm going to send it to you out in Long Island, and you're going to play it for the people and all your union workers and your non-union workers out there. You got a pretty even split. But we have, so far, it looks like we're going to have about $6 trillion of investments, and you wouldn't do that in years in this country over the last number of years. $6 trillion, and that's going to be much higher by the end of the year. And think of what $6 trillion is. You wouldn't have even a small percentage of that under this other system. We're going to be an entirely different country, and it's going to be fantastic for the workers. It's going to be fantastic for everyone. There will never have been a transformation of a country like the transformation that's already happening in the United States of America. It's an incredible thing to watch, and it's incredible to meet with the top people, people that you read about, very wealthy people, or people that are great managers and executives and presidents of big public companies, and to watch the enthusiasm they have now that they didn't have. They gave up on our country. They went to foreign countries and they built. Companies are pouring into our country at levels never seen before, with jobs and money to follow, and it's really beautiful. In the coming days, there will be complaints from the globalists and the outsourcers and special interests and the fake news. The fake news will always complain. But never forget, every prediction our opponents made about trade for the last 30 years has been proven totally wrong. They were wrong about NAFTA. They were wrong about China. They were wrong about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would have been a disaster if I didn't terminate it. If I didn't terminate that, United Auto Workers, you would have had no jobs in this country. You would have had no jobs. It was all going to other countries. In my first term, they said tariffs would crash the economy. Instead, we built the greatest economy in the history of the world. And again, I have great respect for President Xi of China, great respect for China, but they were taking tremendous advantage of us, and I commend them for that. I say, hey, if you can get away with it, that's okay. But, they understand exactly what's happening, and they probably, most of them are saying it's about time they did something, but, and they're going to fight, and they're going to fight fair. Everyone's going to fight. It's like, I say to the leaders, look, you got to take care of your country, but we have to start taking care of our country now. We can't do what we've been doing for the last 50 years. From the day of my election, the stock market went up in my first term 88%, with NASDAQ going up 155%, more than any president has ever had in any term in office, by far. And I think we're going to blow that away. And maybe the numbers won't show, but I think they're going to show much better than even those numbers. But what you're going to see is you're going to see activity, that empty, dead sites, factories that are falling down. Those factories will be knocked down, and they're going to have brand new factories built in their place. They're not only talking about renovating, they're talking about brand new, the best anywhere in the world, the biggest anywhere in the world. I have a friend who builds car plants, and I said, I want to see the biggest and the best. He said, well, we have to go to Mexico. And I said, no, I want to see it in the United States. He said, we're not building them in there. This is a year and a half ago during the campaign. He said, we're not building it. You have to go to Mexico. When I was starting to decide to run, and I went to number one in the polls very rapidly, let's say in the first hour. And then shortly thereafter, it looked like I was going to win, and the fake news was saying, oh, no, don't do this. What they don't know is if I didn't win, they would have really been in trouble, because nobody wants to read them anyway. But I tell you what, when it looked like I was going to win, I announced that I was going to be doing exactly what we're talking about today. Great consistency, actually, because I've been talking about it for 40 years, but because I saw what was happening 40 years ago. If you look at my old speeches when I was young, very handsome, my old speeches, and that people would say I'd be on a television show, I'd be talking about how we were being ripped off by these countries. I mean, nothing changes very much. The only thing that changed were the countries, but nothing really changes. But it's why it's such an honor. It's such an honor to be finally able to do this. If you look at China, I took in hundreds of billions of dollars in my term, hundreds of billions. They never paid 10 cents to any other president, and yet they paid hundreds of billions, so much so that Biden couldn't do anything. They wanted to try and terminate it. because he had a very special relationship with China. You know what the relationship was? He had a special relationship. But the numbers were so big, that they couldn't do it. So they did ease it up. They did things that they shouldn't have done. They made it a lot more comfortable for them, but they couldn't do it because the numbers were hundreds of billions of dollars, and I did that. And we were on our way to doing something like incredible. And then we had a very bad election happen, a lot of bad things happened. So when I said we got to do it again, I said we have to make it too big to rig, and we made it too big to rig, and we won in records, and it was a monumental win. And it was such an honor to see so many of you, like Brian and your friends, here with us to celebrate, and to more importantly celebrate what we're doing, because that wouldn't be a full celebration if we didn't do this, because this will be an entirely different country in a short period of time. It'll be something the whole world will be talking about it. The critics made the very tired predictions earlier this year, but in February, core inflation dropped to the lowest rate in 4 years, and the price of eggs, as you know, just in a month and a half, we were there for 4 weeks. And the first week, I got blamed for eggs. I said, I just got here. They said eggs have gone up at like 250%, and you can't get eggs. And they were going crazy. And I said, I just got here. And then we got to work on eggs. We got to work on everything. And our great Secretary of Agriculture, you did a fantastic job. Brooke Rollins, she did a fantastic job. And as I said before, the price of eggs dropped now 59%, and they're going down more, and the availability is fantastic. They were saying that for Easter, please don't use eggs. Could you use plastic eggs? I said, we don't want to do that. We want to, and you really came through. It's an amazing job. Thank you very much, Brooke. You did great. But likewise, an old-fashioned term that we use, groceries. I used it on the campaign. It's such an old-fashioned term, but a beautiful term, groceries. It sort of says a bag with different things in it. Groceries went through the roof, and I campaigned on that. I talked about the word groceries for a lot, and energy costs now are down, groceries are down, gasoline is way under $3, and people are beginning to be able to buy things and live again. We brought prices way down. We created 10,000 already in a few weeks, new manufacturing jobs. And it was that took place in 1 month, numbers that they haven't seen in a long time. We had virtually no inflation under my term. We had virtually no inflation for 4 years, but after transitioning over to Sleepy Joe, it went from almost non-existent to the highest in the history of our country. They're the highest inflation in the history of our country, brought up by energy and bad spending and bad policy, and a lot of bad things happened. How about allowing millions and millions and millions of people to pour into our country with open borders, where it's so sad to see even now. And I see our great secretary you have done. Stand up, please, Christy. Stand up. Christy Noem and Tom Homan. These people are doing a great job, but gotten them out in records. We have problems with judges that don't want them to go out. They want Tren de Aragua, and they want MS-13, the most vicious gangs ever. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Absolute killer gangs. They kill people. They don't even think about it. And we put them out, and we have judges now, radical left judges that they don't want them to go out. They want them to even be brought back. Let's bring them back. You've done a fantastic job, and please thank everybody. Homeland Security, thank everybody. Appreciate it. And we now have a border that's the best border that we've ever had, even better than it was my first term. My first term we did good, but this one we really specialized in. We've done really well. And we had records then. We had the best, safest border. 4 years ago, we had the best border there ever was. And now we have, you've actually matched it and done even better. And we're going to get it down the right way. And we want people, by the way, to come into our country, but we want to come in through a legal process. We want them to come in legally. We need more people. We need people to run these plants and to help the auto workers and the Teamsters and the non-union people and everybody else. But we need people and the farmers. And we're going to let people come in, but they want to come in. We want them to come in legally. They have to have the capability of loving our country, not people that hate our country. We don't want them in our country. And now we're going to pass the largest tax cuts in American history, and that's where we're relying on Mike and John Thune. And we will not cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid benefits, and the Democrats will, because if they got in, the entire economy would collapse. This country was heading for a collapse under the people that you saw. They were horrible. I think one of the reasons people like the job, I have my highest approval ratings because I think they're comparing me to the worst administration in the history of our country, so I appreciate that at least. But Speaker of the House Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader, appreciate it, Mike. John Thune have been fantastic, by the way. But they've been working tirelessly on taking the next step to pass the plan for our one big, beautiful bill. I'd like to name it that if you can. One big, beautiful. I made that statement about 6 months ago, and everybody calls it one big, beautiful bill. And it will be that. It'll have everything, the big tax cuts and every incentive there is. It'll be fantastic. And by the way, for the cars, we're asking for an interest deduction on a loan. So if you build the car, only in America we do it, Brian. If the car's not built in America, you don't get the interest rate deduction. But if you build the car in America, if you buy a car, if it's built in America, then you get an interest rate deduction, tax deduction, and that's a big thing. That's going to be a big thing. I think that's going to pay for itself very quickly, that deduction. Never happened. We've never had anything like that before. Somebody said, where do you get the idea? Because it's so basic. You would think that would have happened a long time ago. It never did, and I'm very happy it didn't because now I can say that was my idea. But we're going to get us closer to the debt extension. We have to get the debt extension passed, and I know you're going to be able to do that, Mike, and it's very important that you do that. And all of the other things that the Senate budget plan gives us, along with working, because I know they're working together, John and Mike, and the two bills are going very well together. We need to get our shared priorities done, including certain permanent tax cuts. We want the tax cuts to be permanent, spending cuts, energy and historic investments in defense, border, and so much more. We're covering everything. These will be phenomenal. There'll be no bill like this going to straighten. One bill is going to straighten out our country for many, many years to come. And we said, let's just do it and let's get it done. And some guys will love it and some guys will like it a little bit less because they're not getting what they were exactly looking for, but they're getting a lot. They'll never, if we get this done, it'll be the most incredible bill ever passed in the history of our Congress and Senate and congressmen, the senators and the congressmen, many of whom are here today, will be very proud of themselves. I really believe that. It's going to set us on a whole new prosperous path. We're going to cut spending and right-size the budget back to where it should be. We're going to do that very strongly. Thank you, Rick. Thank you. John, thank you. Oh, look at all of our senators over there. Oh, boy. That's a nice group of people. But I won't like them so much if they don't get this bill done. That's a great group. And Congressman, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Tremendous people. The Senate plan is my complete and total support. And the House plan, likewise, is very similar. They're moving along pretty much at the same clip. And as soon as you're ready, you'll show it to me. And I'm sure it'll have my support, Mike. Every Republican congressman and senator must unify. We have to unify. We can't be separated. We have to get it done. We have to get absolutely everything we can, and we have to take care of the American people. That's the only thing that matters. We have to take care of the American people first. We need to pass this bill immediately, get it done, including debt extension. From this day on, we're not going to let anyone tell us that American workers and families cannot have the future that they deserve. We're going to produce the cars and ships, chips, airplanes, minerals, and medicines that we need right here in America. The pharmaceutical companies are going to become roaring back. They're coming roaring back. They're all coming back to our country because if they don't, they got a big tax to pay. And if they do, I'll be very happy, and you're going to be very happy, and you're going to be very safe. We're going to build our future with American hands, with American heart, American steel, and we're going to build it with American pride like we used to. We're approaching our 100th day as president and have been given credit by a lot of people, actually, even some of the fake news. Can you believe it? Which in this case hopefully isn't fake. for having done more in that time than any other administration in the history of our country in the first 100 days. I think we've had an amazing in terms of what we've done, what we've gotten accomplished. I'd like to see if we can get that war ended and another war from not starting in the Middle East. We have to get Russia. They're losing 2,000 on average, 2,500 people a day, young people, soldiers, Russian. Think of that, 2,500 through some days, but on average, probably over about a 1 week period, it's 2,712, they say. They're losing those soldiers. They're dying. They're being decimated. And they're not from our country, but they're from other countries, but they're human beings. They're from Russia. They're from Ukraine in this period, most of them. And we're going to get it stopped. It's a senseless war that would have never happened if I was president, and it shouldn't be allowed to go on. And I think we're being given good cooperation by Russia and by Ukraine, but we have to get it stopped. It's humanity. It's humanity. It's a terrible thing. This will be a very big moment. I think you're going to remember today. It's going to be a free nation that we're dealing with. We're going to have a very free and beautiful nation. It's going to be Liberation Day in America, and it's going to be a day that hopefully you're going to look back in years to come and you're going to say, you know, he was right. This has turned out to be one of the most important days in the history of our country. God bless you and God bless America. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
President Trump at the Rose Garden at the White House. It looks like he is preparing to perhaps sign this executive order tied to this very sweeping policy that was just announced, what he called, quote, kind reciprocal tariffs, a baseline 10% tariff across the board on countries with the 60 worst offenders, tiered structure. So China, for example, including tariffs, currency manipulation, and trade barriers, charging a, quote, discounted 34% tariff. Layer that on top of a 20% existing tariff, you get to 54%. EU, 20%. Vietnam, 46%. Taiwan, 32%. We can go down the list here. Fentanyl tariffs on Canada and Mexico staying in place, with the exception of USMCA-compliant goods, and all of this going into effect at midnight tonight.
And the market reaction after hours, I've never seen anything like it. This, I think fair to say, is worse than the worst case scenario of the tariffs that many in the market expected the president to impose. You laid out a number of the percentages there, and there's some question of how the administration calculated the percentages that they're responding to in each of these cases. Are they adding in value-added taxes? He talked about, non-tariff barriers as well. So I think while many were hoping that this would eliminate uncertainty, there's going to be more uncertainty in the market, and from those watching policy tomorrow on, well, if countries push back on how these non-tariff barriers were calculated, will there be wiggle room here? Exactly when do these go into effect? How quickly are companies going to have to adjust their pricing? So many questions.
Heavy trading here in overtime, after hours, including in the ETFs that track the major averages. We've seen a 4% swing from up 1% to down 3% in the QQQ. We're going to get to Megan Casella at the White House for more.
Hey, guys, so hearing a lot there from the president. You guys wrapped up a lot of it, but a lot of those questions there are some of the ones that we had a chance to talk with White House officials about just before this event began. We can talk about it now that the event is over. On the first point of when these tariffs will take effect, I'll tell you that universal baseline tariff of 10%, that is set to take effect on April 5th at midnight. So just a few days there for companies and countries to get ready for that one. The higher reciprocal tariffs that are more country specific, there's a little bit longer lead time there, but those are set to take effect on April 9th. So a little bit longer to go. But as John mentioned, this is a very sweeping way of doing this that goes much further than some of the options that we were talking about. It's not the 20% across the board. That 10% baseline is there so that companies or countries can't just move to other countries. They're trying to avoid transshipment, as it's called. But otherwise, higher tariffs, some of these 34% on China plus the 20% that's already in effect, 20% on the EU, 46% on Vietnam. We've been flashing all these rates up there. So sweeping measures here. I also just want to note there are a couple of exemptions. One is that for Canada and Mexico, they continue to face the 25% fentanyl tariffs that have now been in place since a couple of months ago, and USMCA compliant goods will continue to remain exempt from that. So no changes really for Canada and Mexico. A couple of others here that I want to mention is that the White House, I want to emphasize this point, the White House is not looking for deals on this, and you guys touched on it. What could other countries do to try to avoid this? White House officials were asked about this, and one responded, quote, "This is not a negotiation, this is a national emergency," and went on to talk about how what they are most concerned about is the non-tariff barriers, like the VAT, like the currency manipulation, like labor standards, sweatshops they mentioned, some environmental standards that they don't think should be in place. So it doesn't make it seem likely that if other countries are reaching out now saying, we'll lower our tariffs, will you reduce this? It does not look likely at this time, guys.
Okay. Megan Casella, thank you. Yields lower, stocks lower, dollar weaker, oil
changes really for Canada and Mexico. A couple of others here that I want to mention is that the White House, I want to emphasize this point, the White House is not looking for deals on this, and you guys touched on it. What could other countries do to try to avoid this? White House officials were asked about this, and one responded, quote, "This is not a negotiation, this is a national emergency," and went on to talk about how what they are most concerned about is the non-tariff barriers, like the VAT, like the currency manipulation, like labor standards, sweatshops they mentioned, some environmental standards that they don't think should be in place. So it doesn't make it seem likely that if other countries are reaching out now saying, we'll lower our tariffs, will you reduce this? It does not look likely at this time, guys.
Okay. Megan Casella, thank you. Yields lower, stocks lower, dollar weaker, oil higher, gold at a new record. That does it for us here at Overtime.
Fast Money starts now.
Live from the NASDAQ market site in the heart of New York City's Times Square, this is Fast Money. Here's what's on tap tonight. President Trump announcing reciprocal tariffs on countries around the world. 34% on China, 20% on the European Union, 46% on Vietnam, and the list goes on and on. We'll break down the impact on the economy, the markets, and a number of key sectors straight ahead. Plus, shares of RH getting crushed after hours, down close to 25% after missing on the top and the bottom line and issuing weak guidance. What this says about the spring housing market coming up. And later, are Elon's days in Washington numbered? Will Tesla shareholders cheer? CoreWeave continuing its post-IPO rebound, up over 50% this week. And Newsmax comes crashing back to earth. And I mean crashing. The details straight ahead. I'm Melissa Lee, coming to you live from Studio B at the NASDAQ. On the desk tonight, Bono and Eisen, Karen Feinerman, Dan Nathan, and Guy Adami. But we start off with a breaking news out of Washington. President Trump just wrapping up an event at the Rose Garden where he laid out his tariff plans. Stocks moving sharply lower as he spoke in the last hour. The SPY down more than 1% right now. Q's down as much as 3% at the lows after hours. Let's get to Megan Casella, who's got all the details. Megan.
Hey, Melissa, absolutely. A lot coming out from the president just in the last hour. The top line being that the president is implementing a 10% across-the-board baseline tariff on nearly all countries. That's effective on April 5th. So just a few days from now, almost all imports will be subject to at least a 10% tariff. He is also going country by country for about 60 of what the White House is calling the worst offenders and imposing a higher, what they call reciprocal tariff against those countries. To give you a little bit of a sampling, China subject to a 34% tariff on top of the 20% tariff that's already in effect. The EU subject to a 20% tariff. Vietnam, 46%. All of those will take effect on April 9th. I'll also say the president is declaring a national economic emergency here. That's what's giving him the power to do this and to regulate imports. I also want to emphasize there are a few exemptions. For Canada and Mexico, they will continue to face the 25% fentanyl tariffs, and the USMCA compliant goods will continue to be exempt there. So no changes for those two countries. Also, specific goods, autos, auto parts, steel, and aluminum, and some of the other ones that we expect to be forthcoming, copper, lumber, pharmaceuticals, and semiconductors. All of those goods specifically will also be exempt from the reciprocal regime, but will face their own tariffs, so far set at about 25%. Just finally, Melissa, I would flag the White House does not look like they're messing around on this. They are not really welcoming negotiations with other countries. They say if other countries reach out and offer to lower their tariffs, they're ignoring the decades of trade barriers that they've had up. They're mostly worried about non-tariff barriers, and they don't seem willing to lower these tariffs in exchange. Melissa?
Megan, didn't the press secretary just today, I think, say that President Trump will always take a phone call? So what's the message here?
That was yesterday, absolutely. Yeah. I know, so they want to look like they're open to talking, and we will have to see in the coming days. There's not a lot of lead time that allows countries to make deals here, but maybe tariffs could take effect and then they start to come down. We also heard the Treasury Secretary told lawmakers just yesterday that these would be the maximum level of tariffs and they would come down from here. We do have to wait and see on that. I think the next step is that countries might start to announce retaliation. We will see at that point how this White House responds and if they try to go higher or if they try to start a conversation.
That baseline 10% across goods, is that to prevent companies from country shopping, tariff shopping, so to speak?
Yes, that's exactly right. They say they're really concerned, especially in the first term, when the tariffs were mostly focused on China. We know this from companies and from industry as well, that a lot of folks were looking and setting up shop in Vietnam or Cambodia. That's what they want to cut down on, is that transshipment. They say at least there's 10% across the board. Yes, you might still leave China if there's a 54% tariff there to go somewhere else. But if that's at least the baseline, they're hoping it cuts down on that to really send a message here.
All right, Megan, thank you. Megan Casella joining us from the White House. With so much news, it is Liberation Day, as it's coined, Guy, and we got a list of tariffs. So what do we make of it? We saw the market reaction, no surprise, lower in the after hours so far.
No surprise. Now, the day actually sort of made sense to me. Market rally, we talked about this sort of yesterday. Personally, I thought there'd be sort of a pullback, not as draconian, not as robust. The market would like that. We would continue to rally. The bond market would sell off. To a certain extent, we saw that during the day. Obviously, a lot of things have been reversed now. So what do you try to make of this? Well, Treasury Secretary Bessent and President Trump have asked for lower rates in terms of 10-year. Announcement like this might get them to lower rates. The question is, at what cost? That 5,500 level in the S&P clearly is going to start to come into play again. But, you know, secretly, I wonder myself, have deals already been in place, despite what they say about we're not going to negotiate, you can't call us, or things in place where a week or so from now, there's countries at the White House or the Rose Garden that are acquiescing and there's some sort of detente in terms of what's going on. So maybe this is sort of act 2 or 3 in a 5-act play.
Yeah, I think the debate, and, you know, a lot of folks have been talking about this, is this policy or is it politics, right? And so at the end of the day, it's kind of what Guy's just talking about is like, are they going to take the calls to your question? Are they looking to do deals? And, you know, when I think about how targeted some of these tariffs are and how basically, whatever they come back with, these countries that are being targeted, a lot of these are really in Trump country. If you think about it, they're in red states. You think about what happened with farmers going back to 2018, the trade war. I mean, they collected tariffs. They collected tens of billions of dollars in tariffs from farmers. And then you know what they ended up doing? They ended up giving it back to them in relief, you know? So you're going to do that to the auto workers in, you know, in Michigan. I mean, the list goes on and on. So at the end of the day, I'm probably more in Guy's camp that, you know, they're talking a tough game here. I think they probably want to do some deals. A lot of these countries are going to come to the table and say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And they probably won't end up doing them, you know? So at the end of the day, I think it's one of those things where maybe they're focused on the yield. I think they're going to have to get focused on the stock market pretty soon.
We were talking about certainty and whether or not we have any more certainty. As Megan had mentioned, even though we know these country-specific and the baseline tariff regime that we will operate in, we don't know the sector-specific ones, such as on pharma, which will face tremendous tariffs because many of the raw materials come from China. We won't know semiconductors, which also will probably face some pretty stiff tariffs.
True.
But we do know for autos, we saw a turnaround in the after-hour session. Somewhat. GM was down as much as 3%. It's now down 1%. You're pointing out also the Mexican peso.
Yes, and that was sort of, I actually rallied a little bit. I don't know where it is right this minute, but I think, do we have certainty, not on the things that you said?
Yeah.
Do we have certainty on what the worst case scenario is? I think we do. I think this is the biggest tariffs we would see. I agree with both Guy and Sunshine Dan that it is very possible and probably more than 50% likely that we do see some movement there. It's interesting after the first round of tariffs going years back, how there was such a push to leave China manufacturing, go elsewhere, go to Vietnam, go to Thailand. Well, okay, so that's sort of been thrown into flux. I think, you're right to see the 10-year, could the 10-year come down and inflation go up? Both of those things seem likely. So that's sort of interesting. And I think, so who does it benefit? I think it benefits a Walmart over a Target, but doesn't absolutely benefit either of them. So if you've got power, you're going to be relatively better off, but not better off than you were yesterday.
I'm not the desk statesman, so me trying to parse whether this is going to be policy or politics, as Dan stated, I just think for me it's probably over my head and outside of my level of interest. What I am concerned about is how this is likely going to affect the stock market and what is Trump's willingness to affect the stock market. And I think here we have seen that this is probably worse than the worst case that was modeled in. And so even if we do start to see some reprieve from what the levels that have been indicated right now, what is likely going to be the stock market response? I think any presidential put, I think you might at least want to rethink whether that is actually in play. And if you are, in fact, getting a lower 10-year yield or 7 to 10-year yield because of lower growth expectations, I think you also want to think about how we're arriving at said destination point. I will say, yes, across the board, you've got a mix. We thought perhaps maybe we're going to get one sweeping tariff level, or perhaps you're going to get, but we've gotten a mixture of both, which I do think, I do think my other panelists are making a strong point in terms of them kind of kitchen sinking it. However, given his reluctance to pull back, despite what we have seen in a weaker stock market, tells me that perhaps he is a bit more emboldened than we're giving credit for being.
The other thing we don't know is how this will impact the economy, because we don't know how long these tariffs will be in place and how they will be taken by the consumer. Let's get more on the economic impact from these tariffs. Bring in Steve Leisman. Steve, in terms of what you've seen economists model in, is this worse? Is this better?
I think it's worse. I don't know what the average tariff is. Maybe we could just pull up. I asked them to make a board on Canada, the EU, Mexico, and China. Those are the principal sources of our imports. So that's the stuff that matters. I think it's over 20%, if I'm not mistaken. So a good chunk of all of our imports will have a tariff over 20%, I believe. And by the way, yeah, you see that big one on China, which I think is actually 54 because it's 34, I believe, plus 20. In any event, people modeled in 20%, and they were detracting from GDP. They were adding to the CPI. This just seems like the president having his own sort of school of economics that's different from everybody else. And he said that the economists were all wrong, but in fact, they would insist they were absolutely right. Here's a comment from the Cato Institute, which, as you know, is very conservative. They said, quote, "These so-called reciprocal tariffs don't mirror foreign trade barriers and ignore those imposed by the United States. For all of President Trump's talk of a new golden age, this huge tax increase will inevitably result in higher prices for American families, lower growth and business investment, and diminish exports and manufacturing output." So it is not a good forecast or a good look from the economists and the forecasters. And as you can see from Wall Street on these tariffs here, the president believes this will lead to a golden age of growth and increase in manufacturing. Economists believe it will lead to lower growth and higher inflation, and really puts the Fed in a pickle here. You can see that there was something of a bump, however, in the probabilities of Fed rate cuts, and I think that comes from a view of greater economic weakness, and they believe that it will be so great, I think, that the Fed will be forced to ignore the surge in inflation. There are the probabilities a touch higher than they have been. That December number for the third cut had been as low as 60, even 50%. But now that he's very serious about these tariffs, you have the market saying, hey, the Fed's going to cut 3 times because I believe not that the inflation is going to be low, but that the economy is going to be that bad.
Steve, it's Karen. Thanks for being on. So getting to that Fed point a little bit more, if you're the Fed, do you need to see the inflation first before you see how bad, the weakness in the economy before you're going to cut? Because I think of Jay Powell thinking of inflation as the single most important thing he wants to not have as his legacy.
Well, I think there's some division on the Fed right now, but nobody's taking any action on the Fed. Everybody is in a wait-and-see mode. And if you take the forecasts on Wall Street at where they are right now at face value, they see that core PCE number up near 3% for most of the first 3 quarters of this year. I personally have a problem with the futures market's probabilities being so high, given that the forecast for inflation remains elevated. So I think the Fed's ability to come to the rescue might be overstated here. It's a bit like there's quite a storm and they can't necessarily launch those Coast Guard boats, even though, of course, the Coast Guard does come to your rescue in terrible weather. But in any event, it's going to be tough for the Fed to ride to the rescue with these kinds of inflation numbers that are expected. Maybe they end up being wrong, but, you know, and the other problem you have here is you have retaliatory tariffs that could be coming down the pike. And as for certainty, I listened to the president. It sounded like there were 3 reasons for the tariffs. Bring manufacturing back to the U.S., get foreign countries to lower their tariff barriers, and raise revenue. In different forms, those kind of work against each other. Maybe you're hoping they're negotiated away, but then what happens to the goal of revenue and what happens to the goal of bringing back manufacturing to the U.S.? They sort of work in, there's a tension between those 3 goals that make it difficult to figure out exactly what the president wants here and whether some of this can go away.
All right, bear with me for 1 second, Steve. So I think the president declared an economic emergency, if I'm not mistaken. I think I heard Melissa use that term. It's clear that the president wants interest rates to be lower. He's made no bones about that in terms of what he has said and some of the comments that have been made through the administration. Is this give him grounds to browbeat Jerome Powell? During an economic emergency, we need rates to be lower, and if he does not acquiesce, is that grounds then for dismissal? Just throwing it out there.
Guy, first of all, you're assuming that President Trump needs grounds to browbeat Powell. I don't think he needs grounds. He'll do it if he feels like it, and he has in the past. He can do it if he wants because of the weakness, but I just think you got to put yourself in Powell's shoes, right? Is he going to be Burns here, and is he going to accommodate the political will to essentially monetize the inflation surge? I am sure that Jay Powell will not be Burns. I am positive about that. If anything, Powell, in the fury of the final hour, as Jackson Brown sung, he will model Volcker. If he is faced with weak growth, but also stronger inflation, he'll probably hold for a while. But if it looks like that inflation persists, I think he's going to ignore the weakness and he's going to address the inflation.
Agree with you 100%. But I get maybe I didn't make.
It could be grounds for dismissal. I don't know.
That's my point. Because if it's an economic emergency and if he's holding his ground, is that by definition grounds for dismissal?
Well,
if the president
it's supposed to be malfeasance, Guy, and I don't know what qualifies
I'm with you,
as that.
Steve. I'm 100%
That's for
with
a court to decide, I guess, at some point. I know that Powell has lawyers for all this stuff, and he'd have to defend himself, but I don't think he would resign. I think he would make Trump kick him out, and that would be, I'm not sure even the president wants that fight right now.
All right, Steve, we got to leave it there. Thanks so much for being with us tonight, dissecting all of this. Steve Leisman, a lot of interesting commentary in terms of the sort of, you know, the goals of these tariffs and how they work against each other.
Listen, there's some stuff in what he said that made a lot of sense. So here's one, and I want to just bear with me for a second. So we talked about shipbuilding, okay? So in 2024, China built 1,000 commercial ships versus our 5. Think about that, okay? Their Navy this year is going to have 400 ships. Ours is going to have 300. By 2030, they're going to have 425 versus our 3. I mean, I could go on and on and on about some of this stuff, but I'm not sure tariffs kind of achieve that goal. Like
shipbuilding come
we
back?
can build, yeah, I mean, let's build ships here. I mean, if we think it's important from a commercial standpoint, we think it's important from a national security standpoint. So I'm not sure a trade war kind of fixes that. So there's probably a lot of things that make sense. And the flip side of this is what is going to happen in 2 years when we have possibly a different House, what is going to happen in 4 years if we had possibly a different administration in the White House, whether it's Democrat or Republican. I mean, there's some of these things that just have to become, universal if we're going to change this stuff. It's going to be this Mar-a-Lago Accord, then it can't just be Mar-a-Lago. It's got to be, something much broader. And I just don't think this is going to happen over these tariffs.
Let's now bring in CNBC contributor Carlos Gutierrez, who served as Commerce Secretary under President George W. Bush. Secretary Gutierrez is also former Kellogg CEO, so you wear a lot of hats. Carlos, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Melissa.
What do you make of these tariffs right now and the ultimate impact to the U.S. economy and trade?
Well, I would say, like most people, this was stronger than what many of us expected. But it's the opening step. So I would assume that this will not be in place in a month, 2 months, definitely not in the back half of the year. So I'm in the camp that this is the beginning of a big negotiation. I would put these tariffs in 4 groups. Number 1 is automobiles. And really that comes down to Mexico, Canada, and Germany. Korea and Japan don't charge tariffs for automobiles anymore. So Mexico and Canada will most likely be addressed with the USMCA agreement. That's scheduled for 26, but that will be brought forward, hopefully in the next month or 2. And that the autos will be folded into that discussion. Germany, it's about, they charge us 10%, we charge them 2.5%. That could be fixed. And it's not only about bringing production back, but it's also about market access. So if Germany brings down their tariffs, then that gives U.S. companies more access to the German market. The second group are these reciprocal tariffs. And this is all about negotiation. So we're going to be hearing about tariffs for quite a while now. And the president has set the stage for what he loves to do. He'll be negotiating every single day for the foreseeable future, which each one of these countries. It's interesting as we think about, is this designed for negotiation or are these permanent? Vietnam yesterday reduced their tariff regime considerably, but the president didn't mention it. And he still included Vietnam with some very steep tariffs. So that tells me that he will use what Vietnam is already intending to do to name as a victory. And the president will be looking for victories. And with this number of countries, I believe he will have a slew of victories that he can point to. The third group is the 10% from all countries. And that's an interesting one. I wouldn't discard that as being a move just to prevent supply chains from moving. And that's an interesting one. We can return to that. The fourth one I would put is China. I wouldn't lump China into these other groups. China is a group on its own. China will require a very special negotiation. It will not be a phone call to talk about autos. That will be something more important, more consequential, and that's hard to predict. It could be a trade deal or it could be something a lot bigger. But definitely bigger than I thought, but each one has a piece, each one has a solution. I do not believe that these tariffs will be in place going into the second half of the year.
The baseline 10%, Carlos, there's no party to negotiate with on that one. It seems like that's one that could actually stick around.
That's a great point. And thing here is if President Trump is looking for a way to keep tariffs in place long term, a way to cement his legacy of tariffs, it would be by putting on, say, 10% for all imports coming into the U.S. Maybe 5, maybe 7, in this case, 10%. So that would be a way of just saying from now on, all imports will include 10% tariff coming into the U.S. And if companies want to evaluate and analyze whether they should be manufacturing in the U.S. or where they are, just do a 10-year net present value analysis, and that will tell you whether you can afford a plant. It'll be predictable, it'll be certain, so that enables companies to be able to analyze it. And it'll also be a way of guaranteeing a long-term stream of revenue for the U.S. government. So that could be an interesting one.
As you look out across the tariffs that were announced, it seems like one of the most punitive tariffs is the one on China. It's a 34%, and that's on top of the existing 20%. And so would you be concerned about those retaliatory tariffs? Because they might not even be in the form of tariffs. They could be in the form of, I don't know, seizing officials, kicking companies out of the country. I mean, there are many ways China could retaliate.
Yeah, I would expect China to respond. There's no question, but it won't be dollar for dollar. I think the Chinese will do what is in the interest of China, and they won't be as emotional about it. And so it could well be less than our tariffs, but something that will hurt us, but will not hurt them as much. And that's something that we should watch. It's interesting with China. I was just there last week, and they're a little bit confused. I thought there was more back channeling going on, but actually they're worried, they're confused. There hasn't been a lot of back channeling going on, so they're just reading what they see. And in terms of negotiating, they like the idea of Secretary Bessent, and that has gone well for them. And I think they've developed a relationship, but below Secretary Bessent, there's no one. So the Deputy Secretary of International Commerce, or International Affairs, that is not in place. No one is there. So part of the problem here is how do you get these things started? Because it's a lot more detailed than just a phone call. But China is one to watch. I would put that in a separate camp. And as you say, I don't think it will be dollar for dollar, but it should be a big negotiation.
Yeah. Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Pleasure.
your
Good to see you.
analysis.
Thank you.
Secretary Carlos Gutierrez, what do you think in terms of the market reaction here? We're still down close to 3% on the Qs at this point.
Well, I think he made an excellent point that I think will matter tomorrow, which is, I mean, Trump has really set this up to do what he likes to do, which is make deals. And here's a possibility for him to just continue making deals for weeks or however long. And so that sets up the market to, if that's the case, and that seems very plausible, that the market would find some relief in that.
Yeah. Bonawyn?
Yes, I just think that in the short term, I think it's hard. My confidence interval of believing that there is going to be a deal and that the goal of that deal is to lead to a higher stock market has definitely been diminished after what I've seen today.
You did believe that there was a Trump put prior to today.
I did.
And now that's out
Correct.
the window.
Correct.
Okay. Coming up, a sector-by-sector look at the impact of tariffs just announced by the president. We're taking a deep dive into what this means for autos, pharma, and housing. That is straight ahead. But first, RH sinking after hours on a big earnings miss. All the details from that report and more on the tariff impact. That's next. More Fast Money in 2 minutes.
This is Fast Money with Melissa Lee, right here on CNBC.
We're sitting ducks, waiting for them to infiltrate our defenses. Millions of tries, and they're in. Uh-oh, this one's in the code.
We empower those who act. Those who see the correlation between things above and things below the surface. Those who navigate risk by meeting every turn with a heightened awareness of what's possible. Constant assessment. Determine the best position. Catch the perfect wave. CME Group, where risk meets opportunity.
At Ameriprise Financial, we know our clients are so much more than clients. They're conquerors and champions, parents and caretakers, believers and breadwinners. The goals that matter most to you matter most to us. Helping you achieve them is what we do best. With personal financial advice from an advisor you can trust and goal-based investing in solutions, it's no wonder we have a 4.9 out of 5 client satisfaction rating. Ameriprise Financial, advice worth talking about.
June 5th, CNBC's Fast Money Live returns. Join Melissa Lee and the team of traders live and on air at the NASDAQ market site in New York City. Get your tickets now at cnbcevents.com/fastmoney.
For years, hearing aids required a prescription and cost nearly $5,000 for a pair. That's why more than 80% of people with hearing loss don't wear a hearing aid. Because hearing aids traditionally have not been for everyone. They've been for the select few who can afford one. Until now. Meet Audient Hearing, the company with a mission to make hearing affordable and accessible for everyone. That's why our over-the-counter hearing aids start at just $189 a pair. We don't just make hearing aids for some people. We make hearing aids for everyone. For the hard workers, for the builders, for the brave, for the families, for the parents, for the grandparents, for everyone. Get your pair today at audionhearing.com. Audien Hearing, hearing for everyone.
Welcome back to Fast Money. RH sinking after hours. The home retailer reported a miss and on the top and the bottom lines, also giving a weak outlook for the quarter. The conference call got underway at the top of the hour. We are monitoring for any mention of the impact from tariffs. Traditionally, the CEO has been very frank in how he discusses things like this. Karen, what did you make of this miss? Maybe not entirely surprising given the trend of consumer spending over the quarter.
Given the trend of consumer spending, right. And also, I mean, the miss is pretty big, though. Yeah. I have to say, the miss was pretty big. And so also, we've seen, of course, conservatism on guidance. Now there's even more cause. I don't know, actually, someone at me, if you do know, where RH had talked about lessening their dependence on China as a manufacturer and sending, having goods manufactured elsewhere. Might that be Vietnam and Thailand? Mm-hmm. Maybe, likely. So that's problematic in the short term as well, and maybe the medium and long term. So I think this is a difficult one because if rates go lower, normally that would help the housing market, which would really help an RH. But not if the economy's slowing and people are concerned.
I mean, it's almost the worst kind of bigger ticket good to sell. It's not something that you absolutely need, like a washing machine that you'll say, okay, or a refrigerator. Right. I will buy it because I need it. You don't need a new $10,000 armoire.
If I knew what one was, I still wouldn't need it. Listen, this is what's going to get really fun to watch. So inventories were up 35% year over year. That's like 10% sales growth. Is that some pull forward ahead of tariffs, hoping there's going to be demand? Or did they just get stuck with a lot of inventory? Either way, you better hope that the consumer continues to be robust. Otherwise, they're going to have the same inventory problem that Target had a couple of years ago.
That's a really good point, though, because their last call was wildly optimistic. Yes. Wildly on demand, because they believed it. They saw it. Mm-hmm. But no, that's an excellent point about inventory.
I would say the last piece is that their debt load has doubled from 2021 at $1.5 billion to now, I think, $3.5 billion. So, I mean, that's significant as you're factoring in enterprise value.
Yeah, and this is not IKEA, and I'm not, you know what I mean? Like this is
the price point is probably the worst price
So,
point.
And we've been talking about that's the last consumer that's going to see the stress. So it is interesting to see, and the fact that investors are willing to sell it down 25% after it's already almost been cut in half, it's pretty interesting.
Coming up, the deadline is approaching and the TikTok bidding war is heating up. The latest names to put their hats into the ring and what it means for the social platform next. And later, a triple play of tariff impact. We're homing in on 3 sectors deeply affected by the new levies. The impact on autos, pharma, and housing. That is next. You're watching Fast Money live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. Back right after this.
With Allegra, you can stop being sneezy without feeling sleepy. Get 0% brain interference for fast, non-drowsy allergy relief with Allegra. It's a no-brainer. See Disney Snow White, now playing. Rated PG.
New projects means new project managers. You need to hire.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. When you sponsor a job on Indeed, it's easier for talented candidates to find it, which makes it easier for you to hire them. Visit Indeed.com/hire.
Todd takes Prevagen for his brain, and this is his story.
Hi, I'm Todd. I'm a veteran of 23 years. I served 3 overseas tours. I love to give back to the community. I saw a Prevagen commercial, and I did some research on it. I started taking Prevagen about 3 years ago. I've told my coworkers and family since taking Prevagen how much of a difference it's made in my life. I feel really good.
Prevagen, for your brain.
The next series of the world's first downside-protected Bitcoin ETFs with 100, 90, and 80% protection levels through our proven protection strategy. Count on us today for tomorrow.
Interactive Brokers pays up to 3.83% on instantly available cash in your brokerage account. How much interest can your bank or broker pay? Interactive Brokers' conservative and prudent risk management uniquely positions us to pay up to 3.83% on uninvested, instantly available cash in your brokerage account. The best informed investors choose Interactive Brokers.
It's time. Yes, the time has come for a fresh approach to dog food. Every day, more dog people are deciding it's time to quit the kibble and
like doing things the hard way, like doing their finances with a spreadsheet instead of using Quicken. Quicken pulls all your financial info together in one place and updates it automatically. How easy is that?
April 5th, join Becky Quick, Alex Sherman, and guests in Tampa, Florida, breaking down the business of women's basketball. Request an invite now at cnbcevents.com/sportsbiz. Sponsored by JP Morgan.
Welcome back to Fast Money. Stocks sharply reversing in the after hours as President Trump laid out his tariff plans. The S&P Spiders right now showing a decline of 2.5%. The Qs down by 3.4%. All major indices had finished the regular session with gains. And take a look at some of the individual stocks on the move in the after hours. Consumer names, no surprise. Crocs, which Karen just pointed out, does a bulk of their manufacturing in Vietnam. They will be hit. They're down 10% right now. Nike down more than 6%. Ralph Lauren, PVH, as well as Estee Lauder on the decline. Retailers, Walmart, Target, Costco, all down big. Walmart down the worst, down 6.3%. And as for tech stocks, as we still await sort of what is going to happen with semiconductors, we've got NVIDIA down 3%. We've got Tesla down 4.5%. Take a look at the airlines. The airlines are all trading lower here. The impact on the consumer could be the concern here. We've got United Airlines down 4%, Alaska Air down by 3.5%. Cruise lines also feeling a pinch, although they have been called by analysts this sort of most value conscious way of vacationing. They're trading lower by about 3 to 4%. Internationally, the China ETFs, the ETFs are all sinking here across the board. Crane Shares China Internet down by 5%. Large cap FXI down 3.4%. And Mexico spiking off lows when the president announced no additional tariffs. India and China ETFs, they are lower. Coming up, a check on 3 key industries set to feel the impact of the latest round of tariffs. We'll get the read on autos, pharma, and housing next. More Fast Money right after this.
Modern advisors need modern solutions. Explore Modern Alpha. Enhance your portfolios and empower your practice, all without taking your hands off the wheel. Learn more about Wisdom Tree Portfolio Solutions. Visit wisdomtree.com/portfolio consultations.
Your record label is taking off, but so is your sound engineer. You need to hire.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Our advanced matching helps find talented candidates so you can connect with them fast. Visit Indeed.com/hire.
Nuveen invests with the foresight and vision to anticipate the needs of future generations, to build strong portfolios that deliver lasting legacies, to innovate and adapt for what's just around the corner. Because after 125 years of yesterdays, Nuveen knows your ultimate stakeholder is tomorrow. Nuveen, invest like the future is watching.
I'm the richest guy in the world. I have time to give.
I have people I can count on.
And a million stories to share.
The key to being rich is knowing what counts.
Amid tariff uncertainty and downgrades to growth, will the labor market remain steady? What the March jobs report could indicate for the economy and possible future rate cuts. Numbers and analysis. Squawk Box, Friday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern, CNBC.
They are trying to shut down this legal loophole to get 100 milligram generic Viagra or 20 milligram generic Cialis delivered to your door for just 87 cents in less than 2 minutes. Do this. First, scan the QR code to go to getfridayplans.com. Then, you select if you need generic Viagra or Cialis the quantity you need, and the dosage. I'll pick 100 milligram, thank you very much, and then their system will see if you qualify. Give it a second to find the best deals, and boom. Look at that. 87 cents for each 100 milligram generic Viagra tablet. 20 milligram Cialis is the same price. The prescription and shipping are free. Scan the QR code to go to getfridayplans.com and see for yourself. Don't wait. Scan the QR code or go to getfridayplans.com now.
Welcome back to Fast Money. Let's get back to Megan Casella, who's got details of what exempt from Trump's tariff announcements means. Megan, what do you have?
Hey, Melissa, as we continue to parse through the details of what exactly was just signed in the Rose Garden, there are a few more exemptions here to flag. They include steel and aluminum, autos and auto parts. I believe we talked about those earlier, but it's also copper, pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, and lumber, as well as any items that might be subject to future Section 232 investigations and tariffs. Those are the national security investigations, so a little bit broad and some leeway there, as well as bullion, gold and silver, and then energy and other certain minerals. So relief for those industries, but I would also caution, Melissa, that it is temporary. A White House official had told us earlier that the reason most, if not all, of these goods are currently exempt is because the president is considering additional sector-specific tariffs on those items, things like pharma and semiconductors in particular. The investigations into copper and lumber are already ongoing. The tariffs could come quickly. So once those tariffs come, those will affect those goods. But in the meantime, and for now, they are not subject to these reciprocal tariffs, no matter where they're coming from. Melissa?
Okay. Megan, thank you. Megan Casella from the White House. We've got reporters on the deck ready to dig into all these ripple effects. Diana Olick will break down housing. Angelica Peebles will hit healthcare, but we'll start off with Phil LeBeau, who's tracking the automakers. Phil.
And these auto tariffs, Melissa, they're in effect. So the first payments as vehicles are brought into the country tomorrow, it happens tomorrow. That's when we will start to see the impact for automakers. Now, we won't see it as consumers. A reminder, these are 25% tariffs on vehicles brought into this country, manufactured outside this country. Last year, that was about 7.38 million vehicles, and nobody's quite sure how much the potential impact would be. Could be $4,000 to $8,000. That is a complete estimate at this point from many in the industry. The expectation is that we will see the impact on the lower end of the market. And the folks at Cox Automotive broke down the market share by transaction price. So there you see, 40% of the vehicles sold last year in this country went for under $40,000. That is the area, Melissa, where many believe you will see the automakers really feel the pain about whether or not it's worth importing a particular vehicle. And I say importing, bringing it in from a plant in Mexico or Canada that sells in that price range there. Quickly, as you take a look at the auto stocks, they've been all over the place over the last month or so, but under pressure for the most part today. They are looking to increase U.S. production. Let's be clear about this, whether that's increasing the run rate at a particular plant right now, using some of the excess capacity that is there. That is goal number one right now for the automakers in this country or who have facilities in this country. We'll see how this shakes out over the weeks to come, Melissa.
All of those estimates in terms of how much this will impact the price of an auto fill, that is just based solely on the car being manufactured overseas and doesn't factor in the fact now that we know that USMCA compliant goods are still not tariffed.
Correct. That is correct. And look, that's part of the details and the clarification that the automakers have been seeking. They're still pushing for other exemptions, if you will, that would continue to bring down the potential cost.
All right. Phil, thanks. Phil LeBeau. Let's get to Angelica, who's got the latest on pharma. Angelica.
Hey, Melissa, well, you just heard from Megan that it sounds like pharma is exempt from these reciprocal tariffs, which is a big win for the industry, although, like she said, it could be temporary because we might get these sector-specific tariffs. And you heard in his speech multiple times, Trump called out medicines. He said that, we need more medicines made here and that companies need to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. or else they're going to face a tax. And people had been really nervous about these reciprocal tariffs because we import about 1/3 of our prescription drugs by dollar value, and many of the most expensive drugs are coming from Europe. So some of the branded products that we get from companies like Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, AbbVie, they're all coming from Europe. And then on the generic side, many of those are coming from India. And so that's why there was so much worry going into this announcement. But again, it sounds like this exemption might just be a short-lived relief, and we could hear more on sector-specific tariffs. Melissa?
The 36% number in terms of the amount of drugs being imported in, those are finished drugs as opposed to the raw ingredients that are brought into the country to make the drug here? Because that's much more, isn't it?
Yeah, and so that's where the details do really matter. That number, yes, is for the drugs that we're importing, and then when you look at the specifics, there's so many different categories, and even drugs, they are crossing borders multiple times. So a drug, the API, the active pharmaceutical ingredient, might be made in one place, and then it might the drug substance might be made in another, and then it could be finished and filled in another place. So there's a lot of cross-border movement, and again, that was why there was so much confusion and concern about what would happen here. Would it be taxed from Ireland or from China, from India? Where were these things going to be, that country of origin? And so that was the risk there.
All right, Angelica, thank you. Angelica Peebles. And finally, we turn to Diana for a look at building materials. Diana.
Well, Melissa, the administration said the 25% tariffs on goods from Canada and Mexico, which was paused for USMCA-compliant goods, including lumber and drywall, will continue on pause indefinitely. So that's a bright spot for the builders. Lumber futures dropped on that news, but other goods will see big price hikes. A lot of new math will have to be done now, but estimates were that tariffs could add anywhere from $9,000 to $25,000 to the cost of a new home, depending on the home size and its price point. Roughly 70% of construction input costs are for goods, and 1/4 of those goods are imported. 40% of appliances are imported, nearly half of them from China, which will now see combined 54% tariff. Whirlpool may be an American company, but 20% of the agitators in their washing machines, they come from China and Mexico. 40% of ceramic tiles for your kitchen and bath are imported, as is 80% of luxury vinyl flooring, half of that from China. Plumbing fixtures and valves, much of that also comes from China. Now, in addition, 20% of construction workers in the U.S. are foreign-born, and that's the highest of any other sector, so that comes on top of those added costs for materials. Melissa?
Wow. Diana, thank you. Diana Olick. So as we look at the sector declines across the board, we ran through some of the stocks are being hit very hard in the after-hour session. How do we think about this as we hear the reporters outline what the potential impacts could be?
Today, when the market opened down nearly 1%, some of the first stocks that went up were Netflix, Spotify, so some of our digital companies. And you think about them, like those two names in particular, more than 50% of their sales come from outside the U.S. But traditionally, Europe, they don't target like streaming services like that. So you might see maybe those things exempt. The other one, man, you want to see a stock an ETF chart that looks like it wants to what, Guy?
Party.
Yeah, that would be the XLU. They have no exposure outside the U.S., and that's a good one. Maybe they can pull up a 1 year right there. So some of the defensives might not be the ones that you think either.
I think you could make the same argument for banks for obviously different reasons, but in terms of like the impacts of tariffs. Now, clearly, you're going to have to take a view on credit and the consumer and deal calendar and ability to generate fees. I would say that that's likely to be offset by an increase in volatility, presenting trading opportunities and fee receipts from those large institutions. So that's another place if, again, tariffs are your number one priority.
Karen?
I'm not sure what to make of it all, because I think, to me, the strategy of the negotiation is far more important than where these things trade tomorrow. So I don't know. I'd like to try to get a better sense of that.
Can I take you back to the summer of 2018?
What were we doing back then?
Sure, we're doing this show.
Probably.
But it was August, and you remember Chinese devalued their currency. And that started a whole cascading thing into February of the following year. And that was sort of on the back of some tariff talk. One has to wonder if China's not going back to that well again. I think over the next week or so, you're going to start to hear more and more people talk about Chinese devaluating their currency and what that means. It's not good, by the way.
I think the retaliatory response from China is really going to be key here. As we stand, we see Apple down 5% in the after-hour session. Is there going to be that carve-out? Or will there be other carve-outs for other companies making their goods in China, especially a high-value good like an Apple?
Yeah, but Nike, but also, what about our companies that do a lot of business in China? Right. This is a tremendous headwind for China's economy. So Apple as both manufacturing spot and as a consumer. Nike, same. Estee Lauder, same. And we can go on and on. Lululemon, Starbucks. I mean, not great for all of them.
Yeah. Let's get to another developing story in Washington now. A host of bidders, including Amazon and AppLovin, emerging as potential buyers of TikTok, and the White House is reportedly close to approving a sale. Eamon Javers got the latest on this. Eamon.
Hey there, Melissa. Well, the New York Times reported today that Amazon is entering the race to acquire the U.S. assets of TikTok just days before this U.S. deadline for a sale or ban of the Chinese-owned company. Now, according to the Times, Amazon made its intentions clear in a letter to Vice President J.D. Vance and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. It's unclear how likely the company is to succeed here. Other reported prospective partners in a deal include Oracle, Blackstone, and existing shareholders Susquehanna International Group and General Atlantic. The deadline for sale is April 5th, and President Trump has said there is a lot of interest among potential U.S. buyers. But, Melissa, it's not at all clear that there's anyone sitting on the other side of the negotiating table here. I asked a White House official today if the Chinese have said they're actually going to sell TikTok and who the U.S. is negotiating with on the other side of the table, and the official only responded to me, stay tuned. So this one is very much up in the air.
What does a 54% tariff on China do to this whole situation, in your view?
Yeah, that's a really open question. I think that China's going to feel it necessary to respond, and we'll see what form that response takes. But clearly, countries around the world have been waiting for this announcement tonight in order to get a sense of where their response needs to be. I was texting with the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt during the event just now to confirm that the 34% tariffs on China that the president talked about as reciprocal are in addition to the 20% tariffs that he already put in place, and she confirmed it and said, yeah. So what that implies is a 54% tariff on China, and you guys have been talking about what the implications of that will be for a whole host of companies.
All right, Eamon, thank you. Eamon Javers. What makes the most sense? Let's say there is a sale to be made. Who makes the most sense, Dan?
Amazon, for them, it could make the most sense. And I guess, who wins by this? The Chinese, if they get a huge price, it's ByteDance. They're the owner. They don't want to sell it, but this is a really important property. And, I'll just say, if Twitter is worth what Elon just bought it back with at $33 billion, this thing's probably worth 2x that. Whatever. So if you could buy this thing for 55, 60 or something like that, that's a huge home run for a company like Amazon that could find so many different use cases for it. And then the other thing is, normally you'd say, well, the regulatory would be a huge problem. Well, not if the president kind of gives a thumbs up on it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, we don't know what China, are they going to sell it, right? So that's a big question. They're sort of much longer term thinkers than we tend to be. Yeah. And so I'm not sure which way that leans, but if you're thinking down the road, do you really want to sort of fight back? Do you block the sale?
If they give in on this, then what next?
Yeah.
Up next, we'll get
which way that leans. But if you're thinking down the road, do you really want to sort of fight back? Do you block the sale?
If they give in on this, then what next?
Yeah.
Up next, we'll get one more check on the major moves after hours on the back of the president's tariff announcement. Shares of names like Apple, Nike, Lulu, Walmart, Tesla, and more, all down sharply. Fast Money, be right back.
At Ameriprise Financial, we know our clients are so much more than clients. They're go-getters and game changers, legacy leavers and visionaries, healers and confidants. The goals that matter most to you matter most to us. Helping you achieve them is what we do best. With personal financial advice from an advisor you can trust and goal-based investing in solutions, it's no wonder we have a 4.9 out of 5 client satisfaction rating. Ameriprise Financial, advice worth talking about.
What if you could put aside your doubts and look to retirement with excitement? At Bright House Financial, we specialize in annuities and life insurance that help protect what you've earned and ensure it lasts. Bright House Financial, build for what's ahead.
To avoid digital threats, just turn on NordVPN. Improve your your protection against trackers, malicious websites, and malware-ridden downloads. Get the deal now.
At U.S. Bank, we know how good it feels to reach your milestones. But we also know here. Because there's nothing as powerful as the power of us.
Next.
This too shall pass. And if you decide to get out now, you're liable to miss some very big gains down the road, even though you're taking a beating for the moment. Getting out now is also not a strategy.
Mad Money, next, CNBC.
You've got a glow about you, inside and out. Show it to the world with just 10 minutes of self-care. Meet Omnilux Contour, an LED light therapy mask clinically proven to reduce fine lines and wrinkles. Find out how you can improve your skin at OmniluxLED.com.
Framing is hard, but FrameBridge is easy. Custom frames, premium materials, transparent pricing. Get started at framebridge.com or visit a store today.
All right, locked in for this meeting. Total focus. Double booked? All good. Otter AI gives meeting notes and insights, even on meetings I can't attend. Dang it, I picked the boring one.
Otter, the AI meeting agent.
Welcome back to Fast Money. We've had about a couple of hours to digest today's reciprocal tariffs announcement from the White House, and we do have the S&P 500, the SPYs down by about 2.75%, the Qs down by 3.4%, proxies, of course, for the Nasdaq as well as the S&P 500. Individual names are all sharply lower at this hour: Apple, Nike, Walmart, Tesla, just to name a few. We're also seeing big moves in semis, airlines, and banks. We're getting a couple more headlines here. Trump is also going to end the de minimis loophole through which Shein as well as Temu have been able to ship shipments into the United States, cheap goods, which have put pricing pressure. Got a couple of statements from various countries regarding what they might do in response. Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, has said that he will be out with a statement shortly regarding reciprocal tariffs. The Prime Minister of Australia says that tariffs hurt the country imposing them, and one way we can get back at the U.S. is buy Australian. We've heard that also from Canada, too. So that sort of backlash we haven't factored into the equation as well in terms of citizens of those countries facing those tariffs, deciding to turn away from the United States and buy just domestic goods made elsewhere. What should we do with all this information as we head into tomorrow's session, Guy?
Well, watch what the bond market does. What is the reaction of are interest rates going to cascade lower, the lowest we've seen now since that 411 print? Is that sort of the knee-jerk reaction? And to me, it's watch what happens in China with their currency and the gold market. I think if you're looking for the all-clear sign in gold, I think you just got it here.
Yeah, Karen.
I'm going to be looking at the VIX, right? We've said it couldn't live around here. Let's see where it goes. It's going to be up a lot. Something sort of north of 30 starts to get me somewhat interested in that, okay, panic. So that's where I sort of like to start looking at.
Can I say both? The bond market. I think Chinese currency, certainly, and you know me, I'm definitely looking at the VIX. I think 35 to Karen's 30. I mean, both are fantastic levels to keep an eye out.
That's where you would buy, 35?
It depends on where we get there. If we rally up to 35 and then pull back, well, then no, I think that's probably a head fake, and then we have a bit more volatility. If we trade down to 35, we settle down from a higher level. Right. I think that's probably where you start to dip your toes in.
Yeah, and again, as the silver lining guy in the desk, I would just say that with today.
Sorry to guffaw at that.
I would just say that in the aftermarket, we're down 6.5% in the S&P 500, and what's discounted here? We still have about a 270, S&P earnings estimate right now, and so as long as that stays here, it's going to look more and more expensive, right? So let's track some of these strategists, what they do. We've seen price targets come down. We haven't seen too many estimate cuts right now, and I think consensus is still for like 12.5% year over year, way too high.
Well, the earnings season is going to be a doozy now that we have the tariff regime laid out. And by the way, we've got a jobs report on Friday, Guy, just to toss that into the mix.
What are you rooting for there?
Right,
you want a
exactly.
strong number? You want to, so that's one more variable to this whole thing, Mel.
All right. Up next, final trades.
Nobody's born with grit.
Rose is really struggling.
It's something you build over time.
It's 21 missed cuts in a row.
For 89 years, Morgan Stanley has offered clients determination and forward thinking to create the future only you can see.
Rose, back in the winner's circle.
The next series of the world's first downside-protected Bitcoin ETFs with 100, 90, and 80% protection levels through our proven protection strategy. Count on us today for tomorrow.
Hi, I'm Jay Jackson. For almost 20 years, Abacus Life has been purchasing life insurance policies from seniors. And in just seconds, you can use the free calculator at abacuspays.com to learn what your policy might be worth.
For many of my clients, selling their life insurance to Abacus was right for them and their estate plan.
Don't sell or lapse your policy without going to abacuspays.com first. There are no fees and no obligations. Get the real value from your life insurance when you need it with Abacus.
I had 8 UTIs in 1 year. This inspired me and my partner Spencer to launch Eucora. Eucora makes effective urinary tract health products.
It truly works miracles.
The peace of mind I've been looking for.
Go to eucora.com to learn more.
Your shipping manager left to find themselves, leaving you lost. You need to hire.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Sponsored jobs on Indeed are 2.5 times faster to first hire. Visit Indeed.com/hire.
Since 2007, Origin has been focused on the future.
A future that helps you build passive income from real estate.
One where we invest by your side without hidden fees or confusing structures.
Build the future you deserve with Origin Investments.
Since starting the farmer's dog, Bogart has lost so much weight, and he has so much more energy. It's like a puppy again. Mambo! This is a before picture of Bogart. Such a big boy. Pre-portioned packs. Makes it really easy to keep him lean and healthy. And look at him now. He's like a show dog.
Bogue, can you give Daddy a break here? He's having a hard enough time.
AT&T has a new guarantee because not everything in business is guaranteed. At least she's cute. That's the cost of doing business. Get our best deals on smartphones like iPhone 16 Pro on us with your choice of our best plans. That's the AT&T guarantee. And right now, trade in your iPhone any year, any condition, and get up to $1,000 towards your new iPhone.
Next, this too shall pass. And if you decide to get out now, you're liable to miss some very big gains down the road, even though you're taking a beating for the moment. Getting out now is also not a strategy.
Mad Money, next, CNBC.
Time for the final trade. Let's go around the horn. Bonawyn.
Listen, given the uncertainty, I think it's tough to pitch what you should buy. Let me tell you what you shouldn't buy. Dollar Tree, I don't think there's any differentiating there, and the tariffs did not help.
Down 11% right now. Karen.
Yes, so this is my second day of do nothing, but I'm really going to be watching the VIX with Bonawyn and other panelists probably as well. And when it really, really spikes, then it's going to start to get interesting.
Dan Nathan.
You know, I hate the final call, and you guys are not playing by the rules.
Sure.
Yeah, okay, Nike, I think, at the COVID lows looks okay.
Guy.
I've always liked it. I think Sandy did a great job. Anna back in the control.
Yes, excellent.
Nice job,
team. Miles, too.
Well.
Final trade, please.
PHYS.
All right, thanks for watching Fast Mad Money with Jim Cramer starts right now.
My mission is simple, to make you money. I'm here to level the playing field for all investors. There's always a bull market somewhere, and I promise to help you find it. Mad Money starts now.
Hey, I'm Cramer. Welcome to Mad Money. Welcome to Cramerica. Other people make friends? I'm just trying to save you a little money here. My job is to put this thing in context, and you're going to need it. Listen up. Call me, 1-800-743-CNBC. Tweet me, Jim Cramer. Bring on the tariffs. Enough already. Let's just disrupt everything. The president wants to do it. He wants to hammer Canada. He wants to hobble Mexico. He's all over Europe and Mercedes-Benz, VW, Lambo. Hey, Toyota, look out. Same with Nissan. China, forget it, Jake. Tough luck, Nissan. And Kia, see ya. Yep, welcome to Liberation Day, where America does to all of our trading partners like we did to the Redcoats in days of yore. It's time to make them pay. Teach them a lesson. Don't tread on me. Just begun to fight. Whether you think it's good policy or bad policy, it sure seems like Wall Street's gotten tired, worrying about it, and just says, bring it on. Although today, in some sort of weird reprieve, the Dow gained 235 points, S&P advanced 0.67%, and the Nasdaq actually climbed 0.87%. You know what? That's kind of like a joke. See, because that was before all the announcements after hours, and the trades after hours are painting a different picture, a horrendous picture. The one we had dangled in front of us since Election Day, the one's 0.67%, and the Nasdaq actually climbed 0.87%. You know what? That's kind of like a joke. Fine if everybody plays by the rules. But we're the only country that plays by the rules. I want fair trade instead, which means tariff those who tariff us just as hard. Of course, I've been hoping for reciprocal tariffs, and that's what we allegedly got, even if they were far more severe than I'd hoped for. With reciprocal tariffs, we allegedly got, even if they were far more severe than I'd hoped for. With reciprocal tariffs, we hammer specific countries for putting up specific trade barriers or subsidizing specific industries. While we got reciprocal tariffs, I never expected them to be this high, nor did many other people. From Wall Street's perspective, Trump might as well have used a meat axe, which is what we were most afraid of. The term reciprocal meant nothing in the end. The term punitive is more accurate. But again, we are going to make too big a deal of it. So in a few more days, we're going to have to start looking for things to buy. Ultimately, I think we've been looking at this president all wrong, though. This president turns out to be an equal opportunity hater. He doesn't care what these countries do. Ultimately, he thinks they can't really hurt us. Why? Because they don't buy much of our stuff anyway. So why not clobber them with tariffs and at least get some money out of them? The president's view is simple. Our so-called trading partners will either eat the tariff or the people who sell the product will eat the tariff. Companies will make less money. Foreign businesses subsidized by their home countries won't make any money because they're simply being run as make-work programs that dump the final product on us. And China, which has used every loophole to get into our markets, they'll be paying too, big time, as will any of our companies that sell in there, because presumably the Chinese will now hurt our companies. There you think Nike. There you think Apple. That's what's happening. We've been inured to this for months because the president has done it with such wrath. But his bite on Liberation Day turned out to be worse than his bark. It's confusing to most people because it was so poorly explained by the president. This morning, there was this terrific piece in the Wall Street Journal that talked about all the Chinese companies that moved into Mexico in order to use NAFTA as still one more way to get into our markets directly. If the president had told that story, I think we'd feel a heck of a lot better about what the heck he's doing. We don't really understand it. We just know it sends our stocks down. For months, we've been bombarded with stories from the mainstream media about how crazy this trade war in the rest of the world is. We've been told that the president's making enemies and angering everyone as if these countries really buy our stuff because we have these persistent trade deficits anyway. We've heard all about how these tariffs will slow down business and cause inflation to get out of control while closing America off from the rest of the world. But the president has not talked about how often Chinese companies are involved in the goods we buy. China's insidious octopus. They've burrowed into so many of our trading partners that if we hurt those partners, we're ultimately striking back at China, too. Of course, we're hurting Korea. Of course, we're hurting Germany. And of course, we're hurting Japan. See, remember, my dad used to be a middleman in the gift wrap business. He watched his government subsidies Chinese mills wreck their American counterparts. Of course, he loved dealing with the Chinese in the end. They were much more accommodating than Americans. But you have to understand, this is about the damage that China did to these American factory towns. President Trump knows these stories like my father's well, and he's sick of them. This is a real problem, and our government's finally taking action, even if not everybody's going to like it. And by the way, it's going to result in much higher prices for the consumer. Again, Trump doesn't care. He sees bigger issues than a small hike in price for things, even if you and I think it's going to be terrible for the average consumer. He doesn't care. Let's talk consequences. The president has not said one word about investing in stocks during this period. He's not suckered you into this market. He hasn't told you to invest in America. He hasn't promised higher stock prices. He may have flinched when the S&P 500 was down 10% a couple weeks ago, but he follows the Dow much more than he does the S&P, and the Dow isn't even down that much from its highs. More important, because Trump doesn't seem to care about the stock market this time around, why should he care about certainty, which I've said over and over again is what makes investors happy? He's not trying to make investors happy. He's not about happiness for us. He's about making these countries bend to his will. And if it causes inflation, then it causes inflation. He never promised you a rose garden stock market, and I sure didn't see one in the rose garden today. Not with huge tariffs on Taiwan that brings NVIDIA stock down. Not on big tariffs with China that'll hurt Apple. Not on the stocks with so many tech companies that will be crushed tomorrow, even as many of these companies are from countries that were trying to build things here to appease them. The appeasement plan didn't work. We keep asking, is it a clearing event? What the heck does that mean? What is Trump, a Trump put? What does that mean? We're missing the point. Yes, I want this over. Yes, I want clarity. I want some sense of how this can all end. But that makes me a fool like the rest of us. We keep thinking that's the point. That's not how Trump sees it. Here is the point. We should simply be looking at companies that cater to small, medium-sized businesses that can't be hurt by tariffs. We need to accept a higher level of inflation because it's coming. We should take out some money and put it on the sidelines, betting that this will end someday, even if we don't know when. But right now, we have to get with the program. And the program is taking down our trading partners and hurting bottom lines all over the place. He doesn't care. He demonstrated that tonight. So you better get used to it. Why is that his goal? Here's the bottom line. The stock market may matter to you and me. It used to matter to Trump. But that was then, and this is now. He wants to punish our trading partners for taking advantage of us. And he'll do whatever it takes to make that happen, even if it crushes our stock market and results in higher prices for all sorts of goods for you and me in America. If that's what it takes to get it done, he's going to do it. I say get over it, and we will work together to find stocks that no matter what Trump does, he can't hurt us, even as that universe grows smaller by the day. It turns out I was right. It really is the Walmart White House. Trump really does believe in everyday lower stock prices. Not in the supermarket, not in the cereal aisle, and not in the fruit aisle, and not in any of the aisles. Only these aisles, right here in the New York Stock Exchange. Paul in Ohio. Paul.
Booyah, Jim Cramer. How you doing?
How you doing? I'm doing well, Paul. How about you doing?
I'm not bad. Not bad, my friend. Hey, I'm a proud club member that would like to thank you for your advice and guidance.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm calling about the world's largest asset manager with over $11 trillion in assets under management. I'm calling about BlackRock.
Okay, BlackRock is doing incredibly well, and I read through Larry Fink's, the CEO's letter the other day. Oh, my God, it was just a great letter, and he's doing all these things that are really good for infrastructure that's going to make a lot of money for the people who invest there. But Patrick in New York. Patrick.
Hey, Jim. How are you?
I'm all right, Patrick. How about you?
Good. So as you're aware, Newsmax, they went public on the market on Monday.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, what is your opinion on Newsmax stock? And
okay, that's a good question. Okay, it's a meme stock. What does that mean? It means it's in control by a few people who write. A meme stock actually means that it's determined by social media. It's not determined by buyers and sellers of the traditional ilk. Social media was big on it yesterday, and it's turned on it today because we don't know what social media will do. It's therefore not predictable. It's no more predictable for me than who's going to win in a given game. And there's no line to help you. Jerry in Missouri. Jerry.
Hey, Jim. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course, Jerry. Thank you.
Jim, with all the downtrodden stocks of late, I want to cut and run from this solar play, but it's so far down that any good news, I'm afraid, will make it outperform anything else. What do you think, Jim? Should I sell out and buy Capital One or hang on for any good news in Enphase?
No, sell out and buy Capital One. There will be no good news in Enphase because you know why? It's not a company that the president wants to see do well. It means nothing to him. Nothing. Since we still love the market, we're going to have to work together to find the fewer stocks that still work. It won't be easy to find because the president's made it tougher. He's got his agenda. We got ours. We both have to do our thing. Homemade Money tonight, Is apparel stock PVH well suited for growth after this week's post-earnings pop? That's a kind of interesting red-hot griddle story for what's going on tonight. I'm going to break down the numbers and give you my recap. It is a good microcosm of what we're facing. Then, fresh off today's tariff announcement, I'm turning to the charts to see what volatility could look like in the days ahead. We need to know about these things. And speaking of tonight's headlines, I'm checking in with private logistics company Flexport to hear how bad it's going to be. Stay with Cramer.
Don't miss a second of Mad Money. Follow @Jim Cramer on X. Have a question? Tweet Cramer. #MadMentions. Send Jim an email to madmoney@cnbc.com or give us a call at 1-800-743-CNBC. Miss something? Head to madmoney.cnbc.com.
Only ServiceNow connects every corner of your business, putting AI to work for people.
Every corner?
Every corner, Nick. So, Kate in HR, hey, Kate, can focus on people, not process.
Oh, actually, I have a question.
Keep up, Nick.
Do you have to be sick to take a sick day?
Patty in IT is using AI agents to deal with the small stuff so she can work on the big stuff.
Agents like secret agents?
Secret agents I control.
With your mind?
You know, I played a secret agent once.
I know. Oh, gosh.
I liked it.
Over here, AI gives Tina the info she needs to get the job done. Nick, what did we say about touching?
No touching.
Good. AI helps Jim solve customer problems before they're problems.
For reals?
For reals. ServiceNow is the only platform that connects every corner of your business, putting AI to work for people.
Oh, so we all work better together.
My work here is done.
Excuse me, which way back?
Follow him.
Some people like doing things the hard way, like doing their finances with a spreadsheet instead of using Quicken. Quicken pulls all your financial info together in one place and updates it automatically. How easy is that?
The next series of the world's first downside-protected Bitcoin ETFs with 100, 90, and 80% protection levels through our proven protection strategy. Elements. Today for tomorrow.
Kelly Evans, Brian Sullivan, Power Lunch, weekdays 2 Eastern, CNBC.
I'm a supermodel. I used their Baked and Brighten, like foundation powder, but I used it over the Spackle primer. It was sick. Their Squeezy blush, and then their In the Buff lip. I'm a model.
Grandma, come outside with me. Please, I want to play. Grandma? You hear me?
Grandma, come outside with me. Please, I want to play.
Come on, let's do it.
On Monday night, we got something very surprising. It was a much better than expected earnings report from PVH, and that's the parent company of Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger. Now, nobody was expecting great numbers from the apparel colossus, but they delivered a nice top and bottom line beat with a terrific full-year forecast and a $500 million buyback to be executed this year. And that's why the stock jumped 18% yesterday, interrupting a nasty decline that had been dragging this thing down for the better part of the year. It reminded me of the old PVH, which was kind of what we used to call an up stock. What made this so surprising? Okay, PVH has been a kind of a roller coaster since the pandemic. From late 2023 through March of last year, the stock roared higher, but since then, it's been steadily working its way lower. What happened a year ago? Okay, well, on April 2nd of 2024, PVH reported an okay quarter, but horrendous guidance. And the stock fell 22% in response. 12 months ago, this was a $141 stock. By this Monday, it was a $62 stock. Although it's now rebounded to nearly 78 thanks to the latest quarter. Ever since that awful forecast a year ago, PVH has struggled to get its act together. They kept reporting strong quarters with healthy full-year forecasts, but then they issued disappointing guidance for the next quarter, undermining all the positive things they said. Then in December, the company delivered another strong set of results, but again, it issued lowball guidance and it cut the high end of the full-year forecast, and that's where the stock really started melting down. This thing's been a horror show. PVH kept making us worry about the future, so when consumer confidence started collapsing this year, nobody had high hopes for the company. That's why the stock was selling for just 5.7 times this year's earnings estimates on Monday, right before it reported, making this one of the cheapest companies in the entire market, right down there with the autos. People had absolutely forsaken PVH. But then the company goes and reports what was a surprisingly solid quarter. Isn't it funny how things work like this? Better than expected revenue, especially overseas. Actual growth in North America from Calvin Klein. Haven't seen that in a long time. Even though the earnings were down year over year, they did make $3.27. Wall Street was only looking for $3.21. That's a big beat for this company. In a vacuum, these would not be considered excellent numbers. I know that. The business is shrinking. Margins are down. PVH is definitely not thriving here. But nobody expected good numbers from these guys. They feared terrible numbers. And what they got was BTF, better than fear. More important than the quarter itself was the full-year forecast for 2025. PVH is talking revenues being flat to up slightly year over year, slightly better than expected. Management also said their operating margin should be flat to up slightly, another positive surprise. Then there's the earnings. PVH said that they expect to make $12.40 to $12.75 per share. Wall Street was only looking for $11. I mean, come on, that's fantastic. Now, some of that's because they plan to buy back $500 million worth of stock this year. When you shrink the number of shares, that naturally boosts the earnings per share. And right now, $500 million could retire more than 12% of PVH's share count. But even if they get there with some financial alchemy, we're talking 6 to 9% earnings growth for 2025, and that is nothing to sneeze at. Of course, even though the numbers were better than feared, PVH's management still can't get out of its own way. Once again, they gave us a softer forecast for the current quarter, although it wasn't as bad as we've seen in the previous quarters. I call this a less disappointing quarterly forecast versus what we've gotten used to. But thanks to the strong full-year earnings outlook, buyers were willing to overlook the quarterly guidance. See, the stock had finally come back down to the point that it mattered, and the numbers matter down here. But what's the story with PVH? The company. On the conference call, management offered encouraging commentary about each of the major geographic regions. They conceded that Asia still has a challenging macro environment, but noted that the company still delivered its third straight year of constant currency revenue growth in that region. In North America, where the company managed modest growth for its two main brands, PVH had a significant increase in profitability. And a lot of exciting things are happening in Europe right now. Strong wholesale and direct-to-consumer businesses over there. Now, for nearly 3 years, PVH has had in place what was called a self-help plan. It was called PVH Plus Plan. Although it's kind of been vague, stuff like win with the best product, win with the best consumer engagement, win in the digitally led marketplace. Now, I haven't really focused on the plan because, well, look at the stock. But how great could PVH Plus be? Well, according to management, it's responsible for the strong margins in North America and the return to growth in Europe. Looking ahead, PVH wants to cut costs when they can. They then use the savings to invest in growth initiatives. I'm feeling a lot more confident on this front than I was last week, although, of course, I'm worried about the tariffs and how they play out for these guys. PVH still has plenty of problems. The evaporation of the consumer confidence in the United States, the tariff situation potentially make it much more expensive to source their product. None of this good. Separately, China continues to be a problem. PVH said that, quote, starting in February, we began to face incrementally tougher headwinds in China, including a post-New Year's holiday slowdown that led to a step down in revenue, end quote. Adding that, quote, the trend has since stabilized at these new low levels. That's not very encouraging, I think. I'm wondering if the step down in February represented a newfound hostility toward American brands after President Trump took over, or if it's just run-of-the-mill weakness in the Chinese economy. Either way, it's something to keep an eye on. At the end of the day, PVH still isn't doing great. No one's saying that. But the company's doing well enough that it could outperform in the lowball expectations, given how much the stock had come down over the previous 12 months. During this period of muted demand, the company's focusing on self-improvement, finding savings where it can, and deploying those savings to new initiatives to help boost growth. They could do a lot worse. Now, I think that you're really sticking your neck out if you buy the stock here, as management made it pretty explicit that business will only truly start to get better in the second half of the year. Their commentary about a slow February, particularly in China, was a little scary. If you want to wait to see another quarter or two before you pull the trigger, that's fine. The stock can run for an extended period of time when it's in favor. You don't necessarily need to nail the bottom of PVH. But here's the bottom line. When I see a company like this, PVH, issuing a strong full-year forecast, and then see this $4 billion company with a monster $500 million buyback, all to be spent this year, I feel that's an immense sign of confidence from management with a trampoline underneath. Just as expectations can get too high, they can also get too low. And when they get too low, it doesn't take much to get a stock roaring again. If PVH can simply deliver another couple quarters of results with non-turbo guidance, maybe it could find its way back to the 120s where it was for so long. Mad Money's back after the break.
Coming up, sensing some volatility in these wild market swings? Cramer's going off the charts and taking a deep dive into the VIX and what it may be signaling for your money. Next. CNBC. Live ambitiously.
Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World.
CNBC's daily digital show has trading updates, the latest headlines, a global perspective, and high-profile interviews. Scan to watch CNBC's Crypto World, sponsored by Crypto.com.
Get a pulse check on the stock market every morning with our live morning meeting.
It helps me to not get emotional with how the market might be behaving.
And it allows you to make informed decisions.
Get invested. Join the club today. Go to cnbc.com/join Jim.
I personalized the outer packaging of the coffee, and I made a TikTok. When I went viral, I had over 1,200 orders and over $25,000 in sales. Had it not been for TikTok, Cafe and Pros would not be around today.
My UTIs were a recurring nightmare.
For the both of us.
Then we found support with Eucora. Eucora has UTI relief products and science-backed supplements that offer a proactive approach to urinary health. I finally feel free. Try today at eucora.com.
You founded your kayak company because you love the ocean, not spreadsheets. You need to hire.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. When you sponsor a job on Indeed, candidates can find it easier, so you can hire easier. Visit Indeed.com/hire.
I'm certain it's level 5.
Are you for imprint certain?
I'm certain it's level 5.
Certainty matters, like the certainty of 4imprint, your home for high-quality promotional gear, including exclusive items and brands they love, printed perfectly and guaranteed to arrive on time. To wow your clients, nail your next event, or inspire your team, check out 4imprint.com.
4imprint, for certain.
Oh, that's very,
Right?
This store doesn't have agent force, so an AI agent didn't tip off the stylist as to what I might actually wear.
Yes.
Ooh, that's a commitment.
Hey, bud, what do you think? You know, people can see you out here. Yeah, right. Love you too.
Agent Force helps retailers prevent fashion fails. It's what AI was meant to be.
The next series of the world's first downside-protected Bitcoin ETFs with 100, 90, and 80% protection levels through our proven protection strategy. Tariffs, today for tomorrow.
You did it. You took an idea on a napkin, built a successful business, and made it look easy. But at U.S. Bank, we remember what went into getting here. The hard work, self-doubt, tough decisions. From all those extra hours to finally enjoying the rewards. Our wealth management team is always here to work with you and every generation to come, because there's nothing as powerful as the power of us.
When we started feeding Bogey, the farmer's dog, he lost so much weight. Pre-portioned packs makes it really easy to keep him lean and healthy.
In the morning, he flies up the stairs and hops up on my bed. In the past,
As we frantically try to adjust to these Liberation Day tariff announcements, we need to talk about the setup coming into, because, well, the setup was weird. See, going into today's big news, the market was pricing Trump's latest round of tariffs like a binary event. We were trading like the tariffs would either be no big deal or the end of the world, but nothing in between. With the announcement of these reciprocal tariffs, I hope we'd be in the clear, but the tariff rates are so high that we're getting crushed in after-hours trading, although it's just the beginning of the process. That's why tonight we're going off the charts with the help of Mark Sebastian. He's a brilliant technician. He's the founder of OptionPit.com and our resident volatility expert. In order to get a better read on the situation, he likes to keep an eye on the VIX. That's the CBOE Volatility Index, which is also known as the fear gauge, because it tells you when investors are terrified, when they're feeling confident, and when they're downright complacent. Right now, there's an immense amount of fear out there, hence the action in the lead up to the announcement. What was so unusual about the run-up to Liberation Day? Okay, let me walk you through this. We all know the VIX, but remember that the VIX is simply a reflection of option prices, specifically options bought in the S&P 500. So to find out exactly what's going on, Sebastian says we have to dig directly into the S&P. With options expirations coming every single day now, we can actually look at specific days to figure out what kind of movement is being priced into the market. Take a look at this chart showing the date of the options expiration and the cost of options for that particular day. Basically, this table shows you the implied volatility of these options, which is what the VIX actually measures. It's the market's best guess for how much the S&P 500 might swing on that day. When you look at the chart, when you look at this thing, Sebastian points out that options expiring on Thursday and Friday, that's the post-liberation options, they are pretty expensive. Thursday has options priced at 36.78%, okay? Remember, all the way back here. While Friday has them priced at 33.82%. But look at the implied volatility of these options for next Friday. It's all the way down to 20.79. That's a 13-point drop over the course of a single week. That's incredible. What does that tell Sebastian? It tells him that Wall Street's pricing in a ton of volatility in the S&P 500 over the next couple of days. That looks right? But then people are going to be betting this will all be over by Monday. In other words, options traders were betting this would be an insanely wild week, a smart bet, and then they think we'll probably be in the clear after the weekend. Now, given what we heard today, I don't know, it could be right. Now, there's another way to approach this, though. I want you to take a look at a chart of the VIX 9-day minus the regular old VIX day. Oh, wow, this stuff is hard. The VIX 9-day is just like the ordinary volatility index, except the 9-day calculates option prices 9 days out. While the ordinary volatility is hard. The VIX 9-day is just like the ordinary volatility index, except the 9-day calculates option prices 9 days out, while the ordinary volatility index calculates option prices 30 days out. They're both measuring well, it is a different kind of time, isn't it? Because a longer time frame usually translates into higher implied volatility. The normal VIX reflects the action in options that are 30 days out. So there are just many more opportunities for things to go crazy over the course of 30 days versus over the course of 9 days, right? So when the VIX 9 days trading above normal VIX, that means something in those 9 days might be causing extreme stress. When you got a huge catalyst like these tariff announcements, a catalyst that seems like it could go either way, well, you get this kind of stress action where the VIX 9 days way higher than the ordinary volatility index. This is a measure of true stress here. Typically, when that happens, Sebastian says it doesn't last very long, though. But this time, the VIX 9-day has been climbing over the normal VIX since March 21st. As for the regular volatility index, it's basically been ignoring the action of the S&P 500. Typically, when the S&P 500 rebounds, the VIX is supposed to go down. And when the S&P sells off, the VIX is supposed to go up. But when you look at this pair of charts, the S&P 500 on top, the volatility index on the bottom, that's not quite what we're seeing, is it? Sebastian points out that the S&P's now rallied for 3 days in a row, okay, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yet the VIX, which you'd expect to go lower in response, simply hasn't given an inch. According to Sebastian, when the market rallies but the VIX stays elevated, Wall Street's feeling nervous. Investors don't trust the rally. Basically, people were guarded and withholding judgment until they saw today's tariff announcements. And for, well, what it looks like tonight, they were right. So what kind of move was the option market betting on? And Sebastian sees that the S&P 500 options have been trading like the index would move 91 points between today's close and tomorrow's close. 1.6% move seems in the cards, doesn't it? What about Friday? If you believe the implied volatility reflects in these option prices, the S&P could make a 120-point move on Friday. That's an insane 2.1% swing in either direction. But after Friday, the option prices calmed down, indicating a sedate set of sessions. I mean, it looks like we could be down more than 3% in the next couple of days. Put it all together, and Sebastian's expecting a lot of turbulence on Thursday and Friday. But once we get through these days, he thinks we'll probably be in the clear next week. Bottom line, the charts interpreted by Mark Sebastian suggest that the next couple of days could be pretty wild. Once we get to next week, we'll have baked in everything we learned from the president today. At that point, hopefully, Wall Street will do what I've been predicting and just kind of move on. But we got to accept the fact that there will be
a house of pain
before that happens. Let's take questions. Let's go to Jeff in Michigan. Jeff.
Hey, Jimmy. Big booyah to you.
Booyah back.
I wondered what your opinion is on Ollie's bargain outlet stock, buy, sell, or hold.
Oh, you want to buy Ollie's. That is a closeout operation. I'm a member of Ollie's Army. I know the stock is up. It should be up. It's right near its high. It belongs near its high. It's a winner in this environment, especially after tonight. Greg in New York. Greg.
Hi, Jim. Thank you very much for taking my call.
Thank you for calling.
Jim, I have a question. Is it a good time right now to start position in Eli Lilly?
I think that Eli Lilly is probably one of the least tariffed, least dangerous stocks. It does have a high dollar amount, 818. But I remember what Ken Langone told us. He's the greatest investor that I've ever dealt with. He says, own Eli Lilly, go into $1 trillion, and it's a $775 billion. I am with Ken Langone. Finn in Maryland. Finn.
Hey, Jim. How you doing?
I'm having a good day. How about you, Finn?
Good. Quick shout-out to my business teacher, Mr. Marks.
Of course, Mr. Marks. Love you.
I have a question for Southwest Airlines. It's been going up and down a lot, and I'm confused because they got rid of free choice seating, and now they're charging for baggage. So what's your thoughts?
Right, I know when you go there, people are miffed. But I'll tell you, I don't like the airlines. Once again, they turned out to be just as I thought. They had a big cyclical move, and now they're done. It's time to sell Southwest Air. The charts is interpreted by Mark Sebastian. It's just a lot of turbulence on Thursday and Friday. I think that could be happening, right? Once we get through those days, though, he thinks we'll be in the clear. Much more Mad Money Head, including my off-the-tape exclusive with supply chain player Flexport. Then what does CoreWeave's IPO reveal to us about the state of this turbulent market? Do not miss my take. And, of course, all your calls, rapid fire, tonight's edition, lightning round. Stay with Cram.
You have got to see this.
Epic Universe, only at Universal Orlando Resort. The game has changed, and public companies are now using convertible bonds to stack Bitcoin on their balance sheets. Once reserved for Wall Street's elite, these are now available to all via ETFs. Introducing BMAX, a first-of-its-kind ETF that invests in convertible bonds of Bitcoin-related companies. Learn more about the Rex Bitcoin Corporate Treasury Convertible Bond ETF BMAX at rexshares.com. Not suitable for all investors. Investors should carefully review the fund's prospectus for objectives, risk, charges, and expenses. Visit rexshares.com to obtain it and read carefully before investing. Distributed by Foresight Fund Services.
Hi, I'm Jay Jackson. For almost 20 years, Abacus Life has been purchasing life insurance policies from seniors. And in just seconds, you can use the free calculator at abacuspays.com to learn what your policy might be worth.
The premiums were getting unreasonable.
We just didn't need the coverage anymore. Don't sell or lapse your policy without going to abacuspays.com first. There are no fees and no obligations. Get the real value from your life insurance when you need it with Abacus.
Accidents happen every day. Sweep it up the easy way with the Helio Air Broom, the lightweight, flexible broom that's sweeping the nation. Watch, ordinary brooms only get half the mess, but Air Broom's UltraFlex blade is specially designed to lift and grip and leave nothing behind. And with the Helio Dustpan, you'll never miss a thing. For pets, it's the best. Just look how easily pet hair comes right out of carpets. Big messes, small messes, dry messes, even wet messes. Helio gets them all and rinses clean every time. You'll love Helio or your money back guaranteed. So get your ultra flexible Helio Air Broom at helioairbroom.com for just $29.99 or call the number below to order today and we'll include our Helio dustpan absolutely free. Plus the Helio Mini, yours free too. Great for cleaning up pet hair in the car quick and easy. That's right, you get it all. A $60 value for only $29.99. So order now.
This is Kathy. She's about to see her dentist. She's afraid. Not because of the drill, but because of the bill. A big bill. But Kathy doesn't need to be afraid, and neither do you, thanks to affordable dental insurance from Physicians Mutual Insurance Company. It's easy to get this coverage. Don't believe me? Call or go online for all the details. You could even have this free information kit. This isn't a discount plan or preventive-only coverage. This is real dental insurance. It helps pay for over 400 procedures. That's a lot. I'm talking cleanings, fillings, crowns, bridges, root canals, even dentures. Bottom line, you'll have help paying for routine care and expensive major work. But if you want deductibles, forget it. There aren't any. No annual maximum either. Plus, you can see any dentist you want. Stop fearing the big bill. Start saving at the dentist. Call now or go to sendinfokit.com.
Physicians Mutual, Physicians Mutual.
Tonight at the White House, President Trump announced the long-awaited details of the new administration's tariff agenda, with a series of what I regard as harsh but somewhat reciprocal tariffs designed to punish our trading partners for taking advantage of us, as well as a baseline 10% tariff on all imported goods. Now that we know more plans, we can make a plan, and to do that, we need to understand what's really happening here, which brings me to the best arbiter I know, which is Flexport, privately held company that helps coordinate logistics, global logistics for customers, the factories to the customer's door. These guys become an essential partner for businesses with global supply chains. They help to handle the COVID shortages, and now they're going to help us understand what the heck is going on. So let's check in with Ryan Peterson. He's the founder and CEO of Flexport to get to figure this out. Ryan, I'm so glad you're here, because I got to tell you, I tried to study this over and over again. I'm confused. What is reciprocal? Does that mean anything, or is this just case by case, some that are the bomb and some that are better? Tell us what's happening.
Oh, yeah, Jim, it's great to be back on the show. It is a messy situation and really kind of hot off the presses. So we're all still waiting for some of these things to be published in an executive order and then ultimately in the Code of Federal Regulations before we have real certainty. And by the way, I think this is probably the way to think about this is the start of the process, not the end. Very clear going to be some negotiation that goes on between the United States and these other countries. But now what is very obvious is that the United States means business and that these are deadly serious. The rates are really high. So what is reciprocal? I don't know.
Right.
Feels a little bit like community-adjusted tariff rates or something.
Right. I mean, do they sit there and think, okay, well, listen, right now Taiwan is got this big a surplus, and we're gonna make it so that surplus is flat? I mean, is that their goal?
So a lot of it is about trade balances, trade imbalances, and you know, it's not just the tariffs that these countries charge to U.S. goods, but also other things in industrial policies, alleged currency manipulation, subsidies, cheap finance. So there's all like environmental policy, suppressing labor. I mean, they have a long list of allegations. And then they think the government thinks, the U.S. administration thinks the best way to respond is with high tariffs. And you see it really, really high. I mean, the ones that jumped out today, over 40% in places like Vietnam and Cambodia that folks thought were safe havens as they moved manufacturing out of China. Those were big beneficiaries, and now you're finding out, pretty ugly. But China got hit with more duties today, 34%. That's cumulative. That's on top of 20%, which was on top of 25%, which was on top of what they already were paying. And then remember, they haven't published the rule yet, but Trump announced 25% duty from any country that's buying oil from Venezuela. So when you add all that up, China's over 100% duty now.
Well, I mean, if that's the case, we have to presume that China's going to come after the companies that are successful exporters to them, right? That are American companies?
I mean, that's one way to respond. It would be to retaliate with more, duties on U.S. goods. I don't know. The way that I've read the book, The Art of the Deal, and I think you might be better off kind of trying to get them to mellow down, bring something to the table to offer something. So we'll see.
Well, did Mexico and Canada surprise you in that they kind of got off easier than I thought?
Yeah, well, they still have this 25% duty looming on Canada and Mexico, so they didn't add anything there. Actually, one thing that really jumped out here was that the duty rates imposed on Asian countries were much higher. Latin America basically escaped here with just the baseline 10% duty. So there's probably something to read between the tea leaves there of seeing that as the United States' kind of backyard and maybe a regional partner that they're trying to encourage companies to put manufacturing in Latin America if you can't do it here in the United States.
Well, how about Taiwan, where Taiwan Semi has done its best, probably the most commitment of any country, any company on earth to build things here. There was an exception for semis. What will that mean?
Yeah, so they did exclude semiconductors. They excluded copper, pharmaceutical, lumber. So, yeah, I mean, it means that the administration is also pretty serious about trying to win the AI race and realizes that putting high duties on chips from Taiwan would be bad for that.
Right.
So Taiwan got hit with pretty high duties here. I think it was 32% or 34%. I'm trying to remember. But in the 30s. But it excludes semiconductors, which is probably, definitely their most important.
All right, so tell me what, I mean, look, I don't even want to take you away from your clients, so I know you'll be up all night, but what is your advice generally from a client, let's say, who's bringing stuff in from Asia versus bringing in Europe versus Japan versus Korea? Just give us the lay of the land a little for your what you'd say customers.
I do think, I talked to a senior member of the administration last week, and they told me that, hey, we should see this as the start of the process and not the end, that this is very much making the world know they mean business, but that they would expect, I think the administration expects that people are going to come to the table and make some deals, that countries are going to come. You saw Vietnam announce they would eliminate tariffs on U.S. goods, so did Israel. I would expect more of those types of things to happen in the weeks to come, and that we may ratchet this back down from where we are. So it's been difficult, to plan. You need some certainty, and right now this is a process where it's a big step towards certainty, but we still don't really know what the world's going to look like. So I'm advising people to wait a couple months before you make long-term supply chain decisions. Can last for years.
Okay, but right. Okay, let's take it. Let's say you're Walmart. You got 400 trucks going from Mexico to the U.S. Who do you write the check to?
Yeah, I mean, this happened to my friend who was importing $100,000 worth of stuffed animals last month, and the duties got hit while the container was in the middle of the water, got hit with a $20,000 bill that he wasn't expecting. So, yeah, it can be ugly. I mean, Walmart probably can afford their way out of this, but, your small business like my friend is like, it's ugly.
Right. Isn't it a little mercurial? I know companies, RH was reported tonight, they were frantically trying to do the right thing by shifting from China to Vietnam to make furniture. I thought that was the game plan. Why? Is there any rhyme or reason to them to Vietnam getting hit so high?
I mean, Vietnam was not like a historical American ally. If we recall, they've been allied with Russia for like 50 years, and they're a communist country too. So I don't know. I'm not sure why people thought Vietnam would be this ultimate safe haven. It is a low-cost labor place.
Hey, how about Japan? They've been our friend, and Korea. I think the president thinks that they got away with a lot, didn't he?
And I think a lot of these countries have real industrial policies that benefit their local countries. And, one thing we know, they really supported subsidized exports and gave all kinds of beneficial credit terms and other things. So it's not just about the duty rates. The administration's been very clear about that. The duties is the best way to kind of fight back, let's call it, but not necessarily in response to their duties. There's all sorts of other policies. And, both Japan and Korea have been very good at that. They, Japan famously in the 90s was like, stealing our jobs in manufacturing. So, it's, the president's been talking about this for decades, well before he was in politics.
And he turned out to be true to his word, right? I mean, because if you're Japan, you can't just call Boeing and say, listen, I want 1,000 planes, and then go to the president and say, listen, I just tried to make it better, right? That doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty ugly. You're out there, you're trying to set up your supply chain and just don't know what to do. And the reality is, the administration's answer to that is very clear. Oh, just make it in America, then you pay no duty. The president said that today. The problem is the U.S. dollar is just so strong that even with duties, the goods are still cheaper from other countries.
Right.
And even with these crazy duties, we'll have to run some math and see. But, I was talking to one of our customers yesterday who imports garlic. And I'm like, wait, you importing garlic from China? Like, California is supposed to be the place that makes all the garlic. But even with higher duties, and we'll see, I haven't run the math on this new duty added to it, but even with the higher duty rates, because of California's labor costs and environmental rules and everything else, it's still cheaper to buy garlic from other countries.
Incredible. Look, Ryan, you're going to come back. You're going to help us. You've got I would say, a clear head on this stuff, and know that there are paths, and not to think that everything that happened tonight is etched in stone. There's going to be deals cut. Some places going to do better. Some places just going to stay bad, right?
That's right. And the answer is, it's probably affecting you and your competitors equally right now. And so it's who's the best at responding to this appropriately and making good decisions, figuring out how do you want to set things up. But sometimes the best way to do things right is to do nothing and wait and see. And I feel like this might be one of those moments of like, let's see how the dust settles over the next couple of weeks and months. And I don't think this is the end game
I
at all.
like your course of action, Ryan Peterson, founder and CEO of Flexport. As always, a clear head on things. Thank you, Ryan. Good to see you. Booyah. Man, Mike's back into the break.
Coming up, Kramer takes your calls, and the sky's the limit. It's a fast-fire lightning round. Next.
Get a pulse check on the stock market every morning with our live morning meeting.
It's an energizing way to start the day and stay informed.
I watch the morning meeting just about every day.
Get invested. Join the club today. Go to cnbc.com/join Jim.
Good morning with Vocalax. Good morning. Yeah. Try Docalax Chewy Fruit Bites for fast and gentle constipation relief in as little as 30 minutes. Making your good morning even better with Docalax.
We were made for Huli. Made to bring her joy. Because when a scary tumor threatened her story, we became her magic. Every nut and bolt became special. Each hand and tool dedicated to one quest. Erasing that tumor and keeping her story alive. Because we were made for Huli.
The average dog only lives to be 10. That's 10 birthdays, 10 first summer swims, 10 annual camping trips. At the Farmer's Dog, we don't think that's long enough. That's why our freshly made food comes pre-portioned, just for your dog. Because a dog at a healthy weight can live a longer, happier life.
Explain 17 years of outperformance in 30 seconds? It can't be done.
We can tell you that we founded Origin Investments because investors like us deserved a better option.
We're proud to be the largest investors at Origin.
Yet we've never made an investment decision in 30 seconds. We don't expect you to either.
So when you have more time, learn how Origin can help you generate passive income and grow your wealth.
I was tired of being told no. No to my dreams.
I had no idea if anyone would buy anything.
This is so wild that I actually, from a dream, started a business.
Yoo-hoo! No. That is against the HOA bylaws.
Bylaws, my laws. We're showing where Consumer Cellular gets great coverage.
You're making everything orange.
I know, right? We use the same towers as Big Wireless, so you get the same coverage. Difference is, our plan started just $20.
No, that can't be true.
But it is.
Wow. Well, I hope you're using primer.
Do we use a primer?
For unlimited talk and text with reliable coverage and your second month free, call Consumer Cellular.
Only Service Now connects every corner of your business, putting AI to work for people.
Every corner?
Every corner, Nick. So Kate in HR, hey Kate, can focus on people, not process. Patty in IT is using AI agents to deal with the small stuff so she can work on the big stuff. AI helps Jim solve customer problems before they're problems.
Oh, so we all work better together.
My work here is done.
Excuse me, which way back?
Lightning Round is sponsored by Charles Schwab. Trade brilliantly.
Ralph Dawson, and I'm him by advice. Also, don't know the course ahead of time. I step personal graphics by you play this out. And then the lightning round is over. Are you ready? Ski Dad. Ryan catch up the score with Steve in Virginia. Steve.
Hey, greetings from Northern Virginia.
Good day.
Land of data centers. Hey,
true.
In the light of data centers, people want their high-speed internet. It's got to be delivered with clean energy, abundant energy, and cheap energy. And I am a great believer in Oklo. What is your opinion?
Well, I'm a great believer in nuclear power, but that does not make me want to own any of the stocks that are involved in it right now, given the fact that it's going to be so many years before we actually build it. So I'm going to have to say, sell. Oklo. Let's go to Scott in Ohio. Scott.
Booyah, Mr. Kramer.
Booyah, Scott.
Hey, I've been watching you for 20 years. Thanks for everything you've done for me.
Thank you.
I have a position in the stock that is out of favor right now, and I'd really like to add to it.
Okay.
So should I buy or ride the storm out? I am long on it on VRT.
Vertiv. Okay, Vertiv's probably going to go down about between 10 and 15% off this news that we got tonight. And then you might want to take a look at it. But a lot of people feel it's a broken stock. It does make the inners of a data center. It is doing incredibly well. But that doesn't seem to matter at this moment because the market's highly emotional. Let's go to Melissa in Massachusetts. Melissa.
Hi, Jim. Thank you for having me back on your show.
Great that you're on.
As a student at Westfield State University, I was wondering if it's worth investing in a couple shares of On Holding.
I like On very much. I think it is worth it. I think Nike's fallen on hard times, and On has picked up the slack. They are doing incredibly well. They got a new single CEO, and I really like them. Don't buy it all at once because this market is horrible. Okay, let's go to Jake in New York. Jake.
Booyah, Jimmy Joe.
Whoa, man, what's happening to you?
Well, you are right now. I want to say shout out to you, shout out to the crew, shout out my favorite twins, Harry and Noah. You and the crew have been electric, okay? Good job on that Carson Carl interview. Loved it.
Thank you. Yeah, I like him too. He's a very smart guy. I like that a lot. Picks and shovels for gambling. I thought it was a good idea.
Of course. So with this one, I think we're well off the peak. We might be at the base. I feel like we're done French frying down. Okay, we're ready to take the express chairlift on MTN, Vail Resorts.
Hey, you know what? I actually agree with you. This stock has come down so hard, I'm getting real interested in MTN. And that, ladies and gentlemen, conclusion of the Lightning Round.
The Lightning Round is sponsored by Charles Schwab.